Let's go. Let's hear it.
While I am no huge admirer of either of the two candidates that are running in this election, I have to say, I think after the first debate that we saw, I would consider that a moment of clarity. And I think people need to recognize now that the choice is between someone who they may disagree with politically, but who is capable of wielding the tremendous power that office holds, and someone who's not. And while I try to really stay out of electoral politics and not give my particular take, I have to say, I think the Trump presidency would be infinitely better than what we've had for the last 4 years. Not because I agree with every policy position or the style or any of the rest of it, but
I like it. They always, I don't agree, but it's always vague bullshit. They'll never actually say anything that they disagree with.
I just think the leader of the free world should be capable of discharging those duties.
Do you think now that Kamala has stepped in, do you think now he's critically reevaluated his position? I like how Trump is retweeting these stupid. Where do you get your daily, everyday news from if you don't watch or read mainstream? I just don't like watch news like regularly, but I mean, you just Google articles and read. I also don't follow much like breaking news. I'm usually more like historical or stuff that's kind of already happened, because breaking news is cringe. I don't want a 3-minute clip. I want to know where this came from. I don't want a 3-minute clip for this. This must have come from a larger conversation, no? I don't normally vote so progressive, but Harris/Walz tickets seems impossibly better than a Trump presidency. Do you think it's strange that the response to Trump has been more progressivism? I don't really think we're not like in a policy world at the moment. We're just in a vibes world, and I don't know if that's how they're thinking, but it looks to me when I look at him, Walz seems like pretty good vibes. So yeah, I don't know.
The idea that the path to happiness lies in freeing yourself from the bonds that you have with other people around you is completely absurd. As any parent knows, the thing
is this mic upside down? Why is it so echoey in this room?
Is that bind you and tie. The idea that the path to
I really don't like this weird switch up that's happened. God, I wish people didn't get so like. People hear a thing they don't like and they define themselves in the total opposite. Republicans used to be these like total like absolute freedom. They were the ultimate liberals, where they were like yes, everybody needs ultimate freedom, you know, free from obstruction, free from the bonds of society. Every man should be an island. We can do whatever we want. And now Republicans have made this weird like flip where they've been like, actually, you know, we have no freedom. We have absolute obligation to our families and absolute obligation to our church and society. We need to be slaves to all of these things because that's where freedom is truly. It's like a total switch up. It's so, ugh.
The idea that the path to happiness lies in freeing yourself from the bonds that you have with other people around you is completely absurd. As any parent knows, the things that bind you and tie you down the most are the ones that give you the most meaning. There is no climate catastrophe. Climate change is happening. It will affect various countries in various different ways, but it's quite clear it is not the catastrophe that we're being told. It is a religious ideology at this point, which seeks to advance its tentacles into every area of our lives through religious methods.
I feel like I'm watching a stupid. I gotta get the out of here, dude. I gotta get out of online content. I gotta get out of all content and just play video games. Like, I feel like I'm watching a parody video of like. I don't even know what. Like some like, oh, this is. It's not even like, it wouldn't even be like an action horror movie or whatever. It would be like a comedy. It would be like a comedy movie. Like, oh, this is the guy who's obviously the dictator because he says a whole bunch of vague things alluding to absolutely nothing over and over and over again with like the upbeat music in the background. Like, what did he just say here? He said, climate change isn't happening the way they told us. Nothing truly bad is happening. Various things are happening to various countries, and they just want to control your life like a religion. Like, there's like not maybe in the hour and 15 minutes, maybe they'll get into more specifics, I guess.
Down the most are the ones that give you the most meaning. There is no climate catastrophe. Climate change is happening. It will affect various countries in various different ways, but it's quite clear it is not the catastrophe that we're being told. It is a religious ideology at this point, which seeks to advance its tentacles into every area of our lives through religious methods.
Wow.
Every time you do something you know to be immoral, when you violate your own conscience, when you lie, when you cheat, when you steal, when you consistently act in ways that are wrong, you become a sort of person who does wrong things.
True.
And eventually, without necessarily
rediscovering religion, yes.
meaning to, you find yourself in a place that you never would have imagined yourself being. I try to really stay out of electoral politics and not give my particular take.
But here I have to say how important it is that we all support Donald Trump, and that the left is actually the worst people. They are literally Hitler, fascist, communist, the worst people ever. I don't usually get involved in politics. Donald Trump is the greatest man in human history, and we must support Donald Trump in the election. I don't follow this much, but the left is the most evil political entity that can possibly exist, and I don't do much for politics, but
I think a Trump presidency would be infinitely better than what we've had for the last 4 years. Not because I agree with every policy position or the style.
Do you think he's going to name a single substantive policy position that he disagrees with, or is it just going to be like hollow, empty disagreements, but on every single core point he's going to be lockstep?
Or any of the rest of it. I just think the leader of the free world should be capable of discharging those duties.
Oh, more vague shit would not, but it's an hour and 15 minutes. Maybe we'll get into specifics. Okay, we'll get into specifics.
Well, Konstantine Kisin from the well-known trigonometry show, we've talked many times. I always enjoy it, and I think our listeners do. We last talked in country Australia when you came and visited us, which was a lot of fun. And that wasn't so long ago, and here we are talking again. But the reason I'm keen to do it is that a lot's happened, and you've done a lot of things since then. You've done a tour of America, and we'd love to hear something of that and your impressions with Jordan Peterson. We've had a UK election, and you've unpacked it in a way that I think is really interesting. And then it'd be interesting if you've got any observations about what's happening in Europe. I'm struck on this trip to England, how many...
Assess their drip. They're dripped out just fine, I think. I don't know. I don't know anything about... I haven't studied any formal wear yet, so I couldn't tell you. Apparently there's a whole code for when you wear striped ties or what direction the stripe... I don't know anything about any of this shit.
Senior people are warning that we need to prepare ourselves for a possible escalation of war. And some of those pictures are not pretty. Anyway, terrific to see you again.
Good to be back.
Let's start. You've done an extraordinary analysis, and we'll provide a link for it, but everybody who's listening to this knows how to find you in trigonometry anyway, of this British election. You're saying that it isn't a great big lurch to the left at all, even though on the surface of it, that's what it looks like.
Well, first of all, analyzing anything like what's happened, it reminds me, my grandfather was an astrophysicist, and I once asked him about these colliders, the Large Hadron Collider and all the others. Why do they do this? And how does that work? And he said, basically, the way that we understand subatomic particles is equivalent to taking a grand piano, throwing it off a 10-story building, and then trying to work out what its purpose is from picking up the different pieces. And it seems to me that's kind of where we are with the UK election. There's been this big disaster for the Conservatives, all sorts of strange things happening. And the one clear takeaway.
Can I, just as a quick thing.
Where we are.
Okay. Me. I don't want to get yoinked on every single analogy, okay? But I can't tell how many people understand what's being said anymore. I just can't. I don't know if I'm going crazy or not, okay? When people give analogies like that, right? Well, what is the point of a particle accelerator, a particle collider, or whatever, right? Oh, it's like throwing a grand piano off a building and then seeing what happens and seeing if our measurements are correct, right? These are analogies that give you kind of a broad understanding of what's going on, but you do understand, I think hopefully we all understand, that the experiment that's being set up and what's going on, none of it is whoa, we had no idea that anything, I could be wrong, but I don't know if the Large Hadron Collider has led to any new discoveries. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I know that a lot of stuff that was theorized to be true was verified to be true experimentally, but our theories and our prior experimentation and the predictions that we make based on what will happen are largely verified and confirmed by these huge particle accelerators, these huge particle colliders, and all of these experiments are done on a very careful measurements, very careful observations, are set up very carefully. It's not just random shit, okay? It's not just random shit. I'm only saying that because not since the Higgs boson, which was 2012. Well, even the Higgs boson was already a theorized. You guys are saying it found the Higgs boson. That particle was already theorized to exist, right? That wasn't invented. That was oh, what is it, right? That was already theorized to exist. Yeah, I'm just saying this because sometimes I see people repeating things and I'm not sure. People say we have no idea. I think the example I brought up before is we have no idea how anesthesia works. We have a pretty good idea. When they say we have no idea, they're talking like at a very, 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 very a highly granular level, a very precise thing where they're saying we don't know exactly how, but like there's a pretty good understanding of like all the different neurotransmitters that are with and the separation of like the communication to different parts of your brain. Probably like there's a lot of understanding there. Just when a scientist or highly educated person says something like, oh, we have no clue what's going on here, what they really mean is they know like a ton of shit about what's going on, but they don't know about a particular thing. But that's kind of like a way they express it. I'm just because I hear this brought up, and I'm not sure sometimes. Sometimes I think people walk around and they think that we know nothing about the world or nothing about the planet. I hear people say like, we don't know anything about the brain. Like in one abstract sense, we know nothing about the brain. If you're talking about like hard problem of consciousness, or maybe like how sophisticated or complicated different things can interact with each other. But when you talk about like, we know nothing about the brain, well, that's not really true. We do brain surgery, right? We do waking brain surgery. We have to know something about the brain to be able to do these things, not just kill people, right? But okay.
The UK election, there's been this big disaster for the Conservatives, all sorts of strange things happening. And the one clear takeaway from this,
I think the Standard Model is one of the most accurate theories of physics. If I'm not mistaken, the LHC has never contradicted the model. Wait, does Standard Model include the... I thought that was... me, I don't remember. Was that the 4 fundamental forces or whatever? Isn't that not our current theory of physics? I thought all of that has been subsumed now by quantum mechanics. The Standard Model of particle physics theory describing 3 of the 4 known fundamental forces, or I guess 3 or 4. I shouldn't say 4. Does quantum mechanics like include this, or wait? The Standard Model is general relativity and the particles. Oh, okay. Standard Model is QM. Wait, what? Fuck, hold on. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked chat this. My bad. Let me read these 3 paragraphs. Never mind. This was a question not for chat. My bad. Standard Model of particle physics is the theory describing 3 of the 4 known fundamental forces, electromagnetic weak and strong interactions, excluding gravity, in the universe, classifying all known elementary particles. It was developed in stages throughout the latter half of the 20th century through the work of many scientists worldwide, with the current formulation being finalized in the mid-1970s upon experimental confirmation of the existence of quarks. Since then, proof of the top quark and the tau neutrino and the Higgs boson have added further credence to the Standard Model. In addition, the Standard Model has predicted various properties of weak neutral currents and the W and Z bosons with great accuracy. Although Standard Models believed to be theoretically self-consistent and has demonstrated some success in providing experimental predictions, it leaves some physical phenomena unexplained and so falls short of being a complete theory of fundamental interactions. For example, it does not fully explain baryon asymmetry, incorporate the full theory of gravitation as described by general relativity, or account for the universe's accelerating expansion as possibly described by dark energy. The model does not contain any viable dark matter particle that possesses all of the required properties deduced from observational cosmology. It does not incorporate neutrino oscillations and their non-zero masses. Wow. The development of the Standard Model is driven by theoretical and experimental particle physicists alike. The Standard Model is a paradigm of a quantum field theory for theorists, exhibiting a wide range of phenomena, including spontaneous symmetry breaking, anomalies, and non-perturbative behavior. It is used as a basis for building more exotic models that incorporate hypothetical particles, extra dimensions, and elaborate symmetries such as supersymmetry to explain experimental results at variance with the Standard Model, such as the existence of dark matter and neutrino oscillations. Okay. So I think Standard Model and QM, I think, are like synonymous, I guess, basically, or Standard Model is a paradigm of a quantum field theory for theorists. Okay. Standard Model is not general relativity, though. It doesn't incorporate relativity. Okay. None of this matters for today. But you will be quizzed on it 2 months from now.
things.
They are not synonymous. Quantum field theory is different from QM. Wait, is that true? Hold on. In theoretical physics, quantum field theory is a theoretical framework that combines classical field theory, special relativity, and quantum mechanics. QFT is used in particle physics to construct physical models of subatomic particles and in condensed matter physics to construct models of quasi-particles. The current standard model of particle physics is based on quantum field theory. QFT treats particles as excited states of their underlying quantum fields, which are more fundamental than the particles. The equation of motion of the particle is determined by minimization of the action computed for the Lagrangian, a function of fields associated with the particle. Cringe. Okay, so Q of T comes from all these other things. Okay, thank you, chatter. Okay.
There's been this big disaster for the Conservatives, all sorts of strange things happening. And the one clear takeaway from this is quite obviously that the Conservatives lost this election to Reform. They didn't lose it to the Labour Party. The Labour Party vote share is as low as it gets, 33.7%. For context, Jeremy Corbyn in 2017 lost the election with 40% of the vote. So the Conservatives lost to Reform, who got over 4 million votes. Not only that, the Conservatives also lost millions of votes to apathy. Their voters simply didn't come out and vote for them. And so what this really represents is the breakdown of the Conservative Party, and the reason they're breaking down, despite what many of their...
Does this guy do more than read wiki articles for research? No, I only read a little bit of Wikipedia. I am actually retarded. Tell your favorite conservatives and centrists to debate me, because I am a retard and I don't know anything. Check out all my recent debates. People like Dennis Prager, I get absolutely trounced because I don't know anything. I'm just a fucking retard. So yes, send me your debaters.
Voters simply didn't come out and vote for them. And so what this really represents is the breakdown of the Conservative Party, and the reason they're breaking down, despite what many of their MPs are trying to say, which is, we were too extreme, when we're not moderate enough. On the contrary, given where those votes went, it's quite clear that the Conservative Party was not seen as sufficiently conservative by its own voter base. And so that's the first piece, I think. The second piece is, what does this mean for the future? And this is where I think it gets really, simultaneously depressing and interesting, because I was actually struck when I was in Australia at a dinner in which there were people from both sides of the political spectrum, and one of the people there, one of your former senior leaders, said, I don't want the other party to win, but when they do, and they will win at some point, I want them to be the best possible government for Australia. Likewise, I want Keir Starmer to succeed, but I don't think he will. And the reason is that the Labour Party have inherited major structural problems, which we can get into if you like, which are not going to be fixed by tinkering with the tax rate at the edges. The room for manoeuvre is incredibly limited for the Labour Party, for any government at this point. And the problems are massive. They're not going to be addressed in 5 years, and they're certainly not going to be addressed with small, minor changes. So what that likely means is, over the next 5 years, the people who believed that the reason the country is where it is because evil, immoral, out-of-touch elitist Tories were in power, and all we need to do is inject some highly moral, brilliant left-wing people to take over the country and sort all these problems out. They're about to discover that none of the problems that they're concerned about are going to get sorted out, which to me seems to suggest, and this is obviously, we're looking 5 years into the future now, so these projections 5 years from now may be completely wrong, but my sense is what is likely to happen is the level of disillusionment with the establishment is likely to rise very significantly over the next 5 years, which means that should Nigel Farage and Reform do the things that they need to do to inject credibility into themselves beyond the 5 MPs that they've got, they need to clean house and get rid of all the really troublesome people who they had stand for them without much background checks and so on. They need to establish credibility. They need to articulate themselves as the kind of the central voice of opposition to the two mainstream parties. Farage needs to be successful in giving speeches in Parliament, etc. If he's able to do all that, then at the next election, depending on how bad the Tory meltdown is, and speaking to people within the Conservative Party, it seems to me that it's going to the ramifications of what just happened are going to run.
I like how they always do this thing. I don't know how to describe this, or what, like, manipulator. This feels like a manipulator abuser tactic. I don't know how to describe this, but they do a thing where they present a concern, but they're actually secretly kind of happy about it or support it. But they do this. It has to do with the establishment, the centrist types, the secret conservatives. They do this a lot. They'll say something like, "I'm really worried because it seems like this is just going to make people not trust the establishment even more. This is going to lead people to not trust." Like, they say it like it's a concern that they have, but they're never actually concerned about it. They already don't trust any of these institutions, and they're actually really happy that people are losing more. I don't know what the term for this is, but it's so annoying when they fucking do this.
For a long time. Then the next election could represent an opportunity for a populist right of centre party like Reform to make very significant inroads into both the Labour and the Conservative vote. That's kind of what I see. So the big story of this election for me is the rise of Reform, not necessarily reflected in seats. They only got 5 seats on 4 million votes, compared to the Lib Dems, who got 71 seats from 3.5 million votes. Fewer votes, 71 seats. So That's what I see as being the key story. The Conservative Party breaking down, losing votes to its right, and then the question is what happens over the next 5 years, as I think, sadly, the country will continue to struggle.
So there's two main streams I'd really like to pick up on there. And the first is shown up in the staggering figures around the number of people who didn't vote. The vote for apathy, the vote against the Tories, whatever it was. The fact is that out of 46 million voters, more than 35 million did not vote for the Labor Party. Only 1 in 3. It is literally 1 in 3 of those who of Brits voted for the Labor Party, and that gave them a sweeping.
I think it's more like 1 in 4, 1 in 5, or somewhere in between those two, actually.
Right.
And yes, it was. I mean, the headline.
Man, I don't give a fuck about British politics. Nobody does. Even the Brits don't care.
You'll hear is it's the second lowest turnout for over a century, but the second lowest turnout, the first lowest turnout was in 2001, when basically everyone knew Labour were going to win again, and that was 59.7%. Well, last week it was 60%, so it's basically the lowest turnout for a century or more, and it just shows you the state of disillusionment with many things.
And that's one theme I want to explore.
Yes.
This disillusionment or disengagement, if you like you and I are involved with ARC, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. We're trying to say that democracies depend upon citizens stepping up and taking control and insisting that government's downstream.
Do you think this guy's popularity is organic? Like, who thinks his ideas and insights are unique and interview worthy? I think that there is a when I look at these guys, when I look at these centrists, I don't know if this is intentional or not, and I haven't thought about this for long, so my ideas on this might change. They feel to me kind of like Twilight. I think that when I'm trying to think if this was the fanfic writer or if this was the director. It might have been for the fanfic writer. When the main character, Bella, right, was written in Twilight, or when you play games like a lot of Bethesda games, and the main character doesn't talk, what happens is there's so little substance that the viewer or the player can self-insert at all points in time. They feel like they're being represented. So when you have these like centrist type figures, they're able to say a lot of things without saying anything. But if you're listening for anything, you'll always hear something. So like, so this might be, this is a cucked statement, all right? I'm gonna make a cucked statement, okay? I think working class people, I think that working class people in the United States are feeling pressured due to year over year inflation increases and a lack of paired real wage growth among people whose income is most disproportionately spent on CPI inflated goods or something, right? Okay. So I don't know if this is true. Maybe this might be. Okay, right. So working class denotes like a particular income group. Year over year inflation, we're talking about a particular metric. We're talking about a lack of real wage growth, not nominal, not inflated bullshit. Okay, and then our income is disproportionately spent on things that would be in the basket of goods of the CPI measures. Right. This statement is cucked. Nobody cares. Okay. The problem with this statement is that there are going to be a lot of people that you might cut out from making this statement. Like, oh, well, wait, if I'm a middle class person, it doesn't matter. Or what if I spend a lot of money on video games and I don't actually spend a lot, right? But let's get away from these boring cuck statements, okay? This might be what we'll say a real pundit might say something like this, okay? Now, let's see how would the centrist say this, okay? The centrist would say this: people around the world are mad and they're feeling pressure because globalist monetary policies have made their currency worthless. Corporations are stealing money with profit, and people don't have money left to buy the things their parents used to be able to get working a single minimum wage job, right? You take away, get rid of all the specificity on everything, okay? Make it about people all around the world. Don't ever like appeal to like an actual concrete like metric. Always like refer to like the vaguest shit possible. Globalist monetary policies. You know, everybody's the same all around the world. Weird metrics like devaluation of currency, stuff that's a lot harder to measure, right? Always blame like amorphous, nebulous things like corporations. Try to make some things that are just like neutral things sound bad. Like profit is bad now, I guess. mess and always like assign normative values. These profit is stealing. Never refer to like a particular type of lack of wage growth or lack of ability to afford. Just say like people don't have the money to buy things that their grandparents used to buy with a minimum wage shit. Like it's all this vague shit. This is how centrists always speak. And when you speak like this, so many people can't identify with you because they're like, holy shit, that's fucking me. That's me, bro. Because this, you're not saying anything. You're like an astrologer, but for politics. It's like when you read a horoscope and it's like, you've had a lot of trouble in life and people haven't treated you the way that you deserve to be treated. But the universe knows that you're working hard and your payoff will eventually come. And there are people in life that notice, even if you don't notice them noticing. It's like, this is like every centrist commentator. This is what Konstantin is like, and Tim Pool and all these people. It's always bullshit like this. It's like fortune cookie political analysis. It's just so cringe and stupid and lame.
Of the direction in which they want to take their country. And maybe it's a big reflection of how seriously that role's been degraded. Lord Sumption, former Supreme Court judge, made the observation to me that traditionally in the post-war years for decades, around 3 million Brits were paid up members of the political party of their choice, but today the Royal Society of Birdwatchers in Britain, I think that's its name, has more members. That's a reflection, and you can see it everywhere, a massive...
Reading question for you. Do you actually intake information as well when reading it out loud as you do when reading it silently? I find reading silently helps more. It really just depends on how engaged my brain is. There are times when I can be really engaged when I'm reading out loud. There are times when I'm not engaged. There are times I can be really engaged reading quietly, and there are times when I'm not engaged. I think there's like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's like I don't know how to explain it at all. Sometimes you can just be really engaged in what you're reading, and sometimes you can just be not engaged at all. If you're not engaged at all, you have to reread the same thing over and over again because you're not understanding it. Sometimes you can be really engaged. I think that when I'm reading out loud, I think that in a way, because I'm reading to you guys, reading out loud forces me to engage a little bit more with the material, because I feel like to read well, you have to inflect on parts of the sentence, and the only way you know where to inflect is by understanding what you're reading. Does that make sense? What's like something we could read? Give me like a passage of something. Oh yeah, some of these like Federalist paper things. Some of this is a little bit hard to read, right? So you could read like blandly, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Like if I heard somebody read something like that, I would wonder if they understood what they read, because there's no structure to like what's being read. Like I can't tell if I don't know if you read it, right? We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the people of the United States. Or I'm sorry, for the United States of America. So like, there's just like ways that you phrase things. I feel like if you understand what you're reading, I guess like, so we the people, okay, so we the people, we're the people, okay, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, right? This is a thing that we're doing, right? And then here's a list. We establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And then because of this list of things, all right, in order to do all of these things, we do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. I feel like if you're inflecting things in a way that's like understandable for somebody to listen, and I'm sure there are people that inflect better than me, I think you have to have an understanding of what you're reading. Otherwise, if you read everything as just kind of like bland and it's like one sentence, I'm not sure if you understand like because if you don't understand the grammar or the structure, I don't know if you can understand the substance or the ideas. Because I would feel like grammar, it would be like syntax, grammar, and then like concept or whatever, some ladder of bullshit. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't know what that means. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Like, I feel like the structure or how you break it out and then how you read it, I think that's just a feeling I have, but I don't know, who knows? Also,
The Royal Society of Birdwatchers in Britain, I think that's its name, has more members. That's a reflection, and you can see it everywhere, of massive disengagement. What do we do to try and re-engage good, honest citizens? If you like this.
Does this really help you? It sounds to me like you're just play acting. I mean, what is acting but just reading things and feeling them? In a way, reading is kind of acting, but I mean, like, in order to act, you have to understand, like, the underlying script, right? Like, you can't just read a script, right?
The 70% in the middle that are watching these culture wars, the elites battle it out.
This isn't new. Classrooms forced reading out loud to help let information stick. So I feel like I'm an above average reader. I don't feel like I got anything out of reading out loud in class. That always felt like the most, well, I don't think I had a problem with it. I think that when you're reading out loud in class, I feel like you're more nervous about how you're performing than you are about, like, focusing on what you're reading. Like, I feel like reading out loud in class is like when you're confronting somebody with a problem in public and you, like, hype yourself the up for it, and then, like, you have a white blank out moment of, like, action when it's happening. You're like, oh shit, I read all 2 paragraphs. Oh, we got it. And it's like, I don't know what the I just read, but I made it through. Nobody laughed at me. We got it. And then you always felt really bad because even in private school, I felt like, oh man, what would I say? I'm trying to remember the ratios. Apparently I don't remember the ratios of people with braces at all. Even in private school, there were a lot of people that had a lot of trouble reading. And I would always feel like this is like torture, man. When the teachers, because we'd go around the class and then you'd hit that one student who's like, oh no, this guy can't read at all. And we'd all just sit there as he, like, struggles through. As you struggles, did everybody have those readers in class? The executive power shall be vested in a president of the, and it's like, oh my God, oh no, this poor kid. I mean, the teacher can't skip them because, like, now you're such an asshole. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like classroom reading was really brutal.
What do we do to try and re-engage good, honest citizens? If you like, the 70% in the middle that are watching these culture wars, the elites battle it out over their heads, saying, what
do you think has led to a shift of people viewing the Dems positively when it comes to the economy? I don't even know if that's the case or not. I think that the economy, I feel like for the last year, has been largely vibes. But I think that right now the issue is that the Republicans are just overwhelmed with negativity. They have to break out of that, I think. They have to break out of that. I was going to say positivity is infectious and you could be positive forever, but I don't know if that's true. But I do know that negativity can't be sustained forever. It gets exhausting. It's not fun to be negative all the time. At some point you need a break, or at least you need something new to be negative about.
Where do we fit in this? Oh, hang it. They don't listen. They don't care. We tried Brexit. That didn't work. How do we start, in your view? You've written a love letter to the West. You know, you're warning us that if we don't value what we've got, we'll lose it.
Yeah, okay. Hold on, I'm pausing way too much to read questions. I feel like when it came to classroom reading, you could also see improvements in others the easiest. I do recall some bad readers becoming more confident and smooth over a year of practice. That's good. I'm glad if that's the case. I feel like for my schooling, I feel like if a kid was getting left behind, I feel like what would happen is you would get kind of like dragged, like Achilles did with Hector's body, I guess, outside the walls of Troy. You would just like drag them until they die, like all the way around the in grade school until finally they graduate, but they're like an unrecognizable lump of human destruction by the time they make it. I feel like kids that get left behind in school are just fucked. I don't feel like there are good catch-up mechanisms for any of these people. They're just that's the feeling I have. Maybe other people don't feel that way, or other people had better catch-up mechanisms, but man, I feel like when a kid was this is why, like, I've changed my view significantly on this to, I used to say this, it used to be like college doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is like a resume and some work experience, and like nobody cares how you do in college. And then I'm like, high school doesn't matter. High school just teaches you to learn so that you're ready for college. And then if you can get your 4-year degree, they'll hire you. And then now I'm at like, I feel like by the time a kid is in like 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, I think you have a pretty good understanding of like how this person's performing in school and where they'll end up. I think grade school is incredibly important. And if a kid is like getting in like 1st or 2nd grade, pull your dick, just kidding. If a kid is getting like this early on in their schooling, you have to do like a massive course correction, because these problems, I don't believe these problems will correct themselves. Because as you learn everything, again, every subject is cumulative. All of the reading and all of the English and all the grammar that you learn builds on what you knew the year before. It's the same thing in math, obviously. History and social studies and science, you can kind of sort of get away with. But yeah, man, when you get, when you start to get left behind in like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you're like, I think you need to do way better at catching people up. Yeah. Classroom reading meme.
Speech class. And the teacher always said, if a person comes to a word, they can't get it, we're going to let them sound it out, and we're going to help them. But let me do that. Don't you do it. So I never forget this guy named Johnny. He got to a word, and it was like, and the teacher, and she kept saying, it sounds like, Johnny, it sounds like, and I said, it sounds like Johnny can't read. She said, Shannon Sharp, get out of class, and don't come back until you learn how to talk to people. I went out of class. I was out for 2 weeks.
Jesus. What is the, I'm curious what the rest of the story is, though. Like, is the rest of the story him learning to be like a team player, not an asshole, or is the rest of the story him just making fun of the kid? I'm curious. I did great in grade school, but then high school was a nightmare. I found out I had undiagnosed ADHD in my late 20s and went back to college. It was a breeze after getting medicated. I kind of wonder for ADHD people if there's, like, as long as you're decently smart, you'll do good up to a point and then you crash hard, or if that's just a giant cope. Because for anything that I could understand by reading it once or reading it in class, I would breeze through. But if I had to study anything, I'm like D plus after a curve, like barely getting by that class. Oh my God. I get a test back and it's a C minus and I'm like, hallelujah, yes. If it required studying, I was
and it was like, and the teacher, and she kept saying, it sounds like, Johnny, it sounds like, and I said, it sounds like Johnny can't read. She said, Shannon.
Oh, okay. Anyway, back to this guy. Oh, wait, I don't know if that's true or not. In the full interview, he explains how he befriended Johnny after bullying him and was eventually adopted by Johnny's family after his mom kicked him out of the house. It's an incredible story, actually, and he became an NFL pro. Wait, hold on. Is that true? Wait, I want to hear that now. I want to hear more about it. That's true. I don't know if that guy's making shit up now. I don't believe you. I think you're lying. Fuck you. Yeah, I made that shit up. You made me feel good for a moment. Fuck you.
You know, you're warning us that if we don't value what we've got, we'll lose it. How do we reinvigorate? What's it require? That's what art's about. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it ties into the central question of, and perhaps one we ought to explore, which is,
do you think it would have been, you would have been interested in studying law if you had come across it sooner and had Vyvanse? I don't know, maybe, who knows? But
why have successive governments been unable to deliver the things that they promised?
Structural problems.
Well, yes, but why?
Also, this is, I'm sorry, just going back and listening to this. This is why every time I try to talk to people, every time I do things on stream, I always try to give examples. Because I feel like if I'm not giving examples, I feel like we are progressively filling up the room with our farts and we're just getting higher and higher and higher off of our own farts. That's what it feels like. Like, governments haven't been able to deliver on what they promise. Name a government, name a promise, name a failure to deliver. Like, just do that, right? Barack Obama ran on closing down Guantanamo Bay. He was voted largely due to anti-war sentiments, especially after Iraq and Bush. Obama failed to close Guantanamo Bay, right? That's like name that we have like boom, boom, boom. Like all 3 points, just ground out the things you say with examples. Otherwise it feels like you don't know anything. You're just saying random shit.
That if we don't value what we've got, we'll lose it. How do we reinvigorate? What's it require? That's what art's about.
Like if we don't value what we've got in the West, we'll lose it. Value what? What are we talking about? Like 10 minutes in and I haven't heard a single thing of substance yet. Also, I'm pausing a lot and talking to you guys, but okay, we'll go for 10 minutes uninterrupted. Let's go.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it ties into the central question of, and perhaps one we ought to explore, which is why have successive governments been unable to deliver the things that they promised?
Structural problems.
Well, yes, but why aren't we fixing the structural problems?
What structural problems? What structural problems did he bring up? What structural problems we need to fix? How are you suggesting to fix them? I could think of structural problems in the United States. One structural problem might be the way that the Electoral College or the Supreme Court works. A way to fix that might be doing a vote by popular vote, forcing all states to split their Electoral College vote, or for the Supreme Court, doing term limits. So every president is guaranteed one Supreme Court pick or two, right? That's a structural problem. We've talked about why we can't fix it, right? Because it would require legislation from Congress, an agreement by 20 plus states, or an amendment from the Constitution, right? Yeah, name something, give something, say something.
Because obviously we could direct our energies towards dealing with them. House building, illegal immigration. I mean, we can go down.
House building and illegal immigration are you've named broad. Those are very broad things. What are we talking about? Is all immigration bad? Didn't you say isn't his family from Ukraine, Russia? Should you not? I don't know if he's a British citizen or not. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, name something. But look, because it's so vague, everybody can identify with what he's saying, and nobody will get offended by what he's saying, right? It allows people who say are racist and anti-immigrant, the mass migration, those people can be like, yeah, he's awesome. And then the people who are immigrants are like, Konstantin, kind of seems like you're kind of in a weird area here, buddy. And he's like, what? I didn't say I was against XYZ. Well, yeah, because you didn't say anything.
Like a product, we can go down the full list. And if you talk to people who have recently been and not so recently been...
Like, go down a full list of what? Go down the full list, then. Go down a list. What list? Go down it.
Direct our energies towards dealing with them. House building, illegal immigration. I mean, we can go down, like a product, we can go down the full list. And if you talk to people who have recently been and not so recently been in government, we've had these people in trigonometry, a number of them. Steve Hilton, David Cameron's former advisor. We just had Rory Stewart on the show, who's a...
Okay, wow. We are naming particular politicians who are part of a particular... you wouldn't say administration for British government, right? You'd say they were part of the government, I think. I don't know if you would say administration or regime. I think you would just say part of the government, right? Okay, so cool. So now he's probably going to name some very particular, specific things that they spoke about, right? Or something with specificity, right?
He was a completely different, person in terms of his political views. I think he voted for the Greens at the last election. But nonetheless, one of the things they all say is,
okay,
we have got to a point where it's effectively impossible or close to impossible for elected officials, elected ministers, elected politicians to actually deliver things because of the civil service.
Deliver what things? And how is the civil service blocking it? Like how? Maybe he's about to get into it. Okay. Are they intentionally doing this, or are they just retarded? I never know how much self-awareness a person has. I know when I'm talking about things that I don't have much information on. I'm trying to think of... The thing is that like I wouldn't go into a debate like that. I would be too worried about getting exposed. Because every time I go into a debate, I'm always worried that somebody's going to ask me a question about or try to drill down on something I've said. And if I don't have anything to back it up, I'm going to look like a retard. I'm trying to think of something. Usually if I don't know that much about a thing, I'll usually qualify it. I'll just say like, oh, I'm not too sure about this, or this is a low conviction take. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done this in a long time. It was probably 5 or 6 years where I'm like talking about some shit where it's like, I really don't. I couldn't go much deeper into this, or I'm just speaking in very vague general statements. But this is like this is just like a lot of epistemic training, I guess.
Elected officials, elected ministers, elected politicians to actually deliver things because of the civil service. And so what they say,
like civil service, like, yeah, what do you mean?
Is, Roy Stewart in our interview gave this example of how he was dealing, I think it was either Syria or Yemen. He was in charge of dealing with Britain's response to that particular conflict.
So Syria and Yemen, we've got two very different conflicts. Okay, so what are we talking about now?
And his team was shipped off to Glasgow, in the very north of the United Kingdom, because it was perceived that would be better for the local community. Or another example where he had...
I don't even know what... I'm sorry, hold on, I have to listen to this again. I don't even know what he just...
That's one of the things they all say is, we have got to a point where ministers, elected politicians, to actually deliver things because of the civil service. And so what they say is, Roy Stewart in our interview gave this example of how he was dealing, I think it was either Syria or Yemen. He was in charge of dealing with Britain's response to that particular conflict. And his team was shipped off to Glasgow, in the very north of the United Kingdom, because it was perceived that would be better for the local community. Or another example where
he's like, it sounds like he's trying to do a very weird anti-woke attack. He's saying that the team of people that were in charge of managing Britain's response to things going on in Syria or Yemen were relocated from where? I guess London to Glasgow, because people in London would be offended that the people that were... What are we even talking about here? What are we... That's what he's saying, I think. He's saying that, like, the minorities, the blacks and the browns in wherever the government people normally are would have been offended, so they had to move them north to an Okay. Glasgow? I don't know what the fuck.
Had the person who was supposed to be implementing his policy, the most senior civil.
Do you think good rhetoric helped you push through topics you weren't informed enough on in your past debates? Maybe like 6 or 7 years ago? You could do it, yeah. Like I can identify very quick. That's why I can identify very quickly when Vosh is doing it. You can tell very quickly when somebody can't debate the point anymore and they've switched over to kind of like philosophy mode because they have no more substance and no more argumentation prepared. So they just go into like the, yeah.
Or another example where he had the person who was supposed to be implementing his policy, the most senior civil servant, working.
Is that what you got from that? That was so fucking vague. I'm surprised you understood anything. Well, because he's speaking to the anti-woke. That's what he's saying here. He's saying, hold on, let me redo this.
In the very north of the was dealing with Britain's response. He was dealing, I think, Rory Stewart in our interview gave this example of how he was dealing, I think it was either Syria or Yemen. He was in charge of dealing with Britain's response to that particular conflict. And his team was shipped off to Glasgow in the very north of the United Kingdom because it was perceived that that would be better for the local community. Or another example.
It sounds like he's saying that, yeah, do the government people normally reside in London? That would be my guess. I truly have no idea. It sounds like he's saying that the minority community of London would be upset if the people dealing with Yemen and Syria, because those are brown people, would be upset if they were there, so they shipped them off to Glasgow. That's what it sounds like he's saying. Is Glasgow a super white area? I have no idea. I don't fucking know. It's in Scotland, so that'd be my guess. But maybe they've been taken over by Muslims as well. Okay, and then what's his next example? I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to take from that. That's not what he's saying? That's not the claim? Okay, I don't know what the claim is. I have no idea.
Example where he had the person who was supposed to be implementing his policy, the most senior civil servant, working under him, and he had two of them because they were job sharing. One did Monday to Wednesday, the other one did Thursday and Friday. And he was told, well, this will be completely smooth, and of course, Minister, this will be fine. Naturally, we're talking about a situation where we're putting secondary concerns in front of primary concerns. And so as long as elected officials are unable to deliver the things they're elected to do.
I don't know. So somebody's doing Monday through Wednesday, somebody's doing Thursday, Friday, and that means they're putting secondary before primary concerns, and that was supposed to be smooth, but it wasn't. I have no fucking idea what he's talking about. I don't know what I'm supposed to take from this.
Then voter apathy is perfectly understandable and rational. And in that situation, I think it's a very difficult sell to say to people, well, you must go and vote for one of these two parties, neither of which is going to do what you want. Neither of which.
Okay, so somebody's saying that it's been a thing in the UK to move some government services out of London to spread out more evenly across the country. But he wasn't talking about government services. He was just talking about like particular people who were responding to the situation in Yemen and Syria, right? He sounded like they were talking about... See this timestamp here. Wait, hold on.
Of this depressed area near Glasgow.
Holy shit.
I discovered that my Syrian team was moved from London to East Kilbride near Glasgow, 400 miles away. Why? Because somebody thought it would be great for the economy of this depressed area near Glasgow to have these civil servants moved up there. So I'd say, well, wait a second, we're fighting a war. Right? Who's going to be in the meetings with the Ministry of Defence? Who's going to be in the meetings with the Foreign Office? Meetings are happening in London. Oh, don't worry, Minister. People will always be able to fly down. Sorry, first they say they can do it on Zoom, then I say, no, that's not the point, right? A lot of this stuff is happening in the margins of meetings. It's not just happening on Zoom call. Okay. Don't worry, they'll be able to fly down. Then I notice they're not flying down. So then I go up to Glasgow, I'm like, what's happening? And they say, oh, Minister, we've just done a carbon audit, and we've discovered that all these people were taking these flights. So we banned anybody from taking flights down from Glasgow to London. Instead, people can do all this stuff virtually. Now, there are two very valuable things happening here, right?
Okay. I understand what he's saying here. I don't know how true any of this is, but I understand what this Rory Stewart guy is saying. He's saying that they flew my people around because, wait, was it to give... It would give more economic opportunity to that area to have a few politicians move down, or
for part of our effort during the Syrian war. I discovered that my Syrian team was moved from London to East Kilbride near Glasgow, 400 miles away. Why? Because somebody thought it would be great for the economy of this depressed area near Glasgow to have these civil servants moved up there. So I'd say, well, wait a second, we're fighting a war. Right? Who's going to be in the meetings with the Ministry of Defence? Who's going to...
I guess if you're moving like 100 or 1,000 people, I don't know. But okay. So, okay.
Be in the meetings with the Foreign Office. Meetings
okay, so I understand what he's saying there. Okay, so he's trying to restate this guy's position. Let me see if I can understand this better now. One second.
Or another example where he had the person who was supposed to be implementing his policy, the most senior civil servant, working under him, and he had two of them because they were job sharing. One did Monday.
Wait, not that.
I think it was either Syria or... What they say is, Rory Stewart in our interview gave this example of how he was dealing, I think it was either Syria or Yemen. He was in charge of dealing with Britain's response to that particular conflict, and his team was shipped off to Glasgow in the very north of the United Kingdom, because it was perceived that that would be better for the local community. Or another example where he had...
Okay, I understand. He just says this in the dumbest way. It was perceived that it would be better for the local community. But it like an economic boon by moving around more of the government to having civil service in areas by... Okay. I feel like he stated that very unclearly. I don't think I would have ever gotten what Stewart said, or Rory Stewart, is that his guy's name? I don't think I would have ever gotten that from this translation, but okay.
The person who was supposed to be implementing his policy, the more senior civil servant working under him, and he had two of them because they were job sharing. One did Monday to Wednesday, the other one did Thursday and Friday. And he was told, well, this would be completely smooth, and of course, Minister, this will be fine. Naturally, we're talking about a situation where we're putting secondary concerns in front of primary concerns.
He's saying community, which makes you think it's about culture instead of economy. Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I was hearing. But I guess this guy was talking about economy, yeah.
And so as long as elected officials are unable to deliver the things they're elected to do, then voter apathy is perfectly understandable and rational. And in that...
But then the question is here, so there's always going to be like small inefficiencies for anything really, because it happens in corporations as well, although people sometimes like to talk about it and people sometimes don't. Is this the main reason why the government can't do its job well? Is because people are being flown around too much, or because people are... what was the other example that he gave? Because people are trading off jobs throughout the week. Is that the reason why?
Situation, I think it's a very difficult sell to say to people, well, you must go and vote for one of these two parties, neither of which is going to do what you want. Neither of which is not only what you want, but what they promised you to do. And so the democratic deficit, I think, is a reflection of the fact that power does not seem to reside where it should be residing. And, as someone who was in office, perhaps you're a better place to tell me what one might do about that.
It was a different era. It started with the Prime Minister in our government. He expected every minister to be in control of their departments. It wasn't to be the other way around. And if you weren't in control of your department, you weren't likely to hold on to your job. And I don't know that it's become increasingly impossible. So to follow through as an example, tell me if I'm correct, because I might have this wrong. But I think it's fair to say that from Brexit on, the British people have been saying, we want some control over immigration and illegal arrivals. Government tried to act on that. And it was the civil service who essentially blocked it by legal channels.
Well, yes, that's one of the stories that you'll hear when you talk to people in the Conservative Party. The other story articulated by people like Suella Braverman is actually, yes, the civil service is not massively helpful, but the real reason is that there are people within the Conservative Party, elected MPs, who had no desire to deal with these issues. And of course, these are now the very MPs who haven't been absolutely decimated at the election are saying the reason the Conservative Party was unsuccessful is they were not more moderate. They were not sufficiently left-wing, effectively.
I'm going to make a huge statement and a big guess about British politics. I could be totally wrong, but here is my guess, okay? My guess is going to be that people in general have an anxiety, okay? People express that anxiety in a vague manner towards a vague thing, like immigration. People end up getting elected for the anxiety that was expressed about the vague thing to fix the vague thing. But when it comes time to actually write policy, you have no fucking idea what the fuck you're supposed to legislate on because you don't know what the fuck people actually want or what they complained about. I feel like, as a non-British person, I feel like this was a lot of what happened with Brexit. For whatever fucking reason, Brexit came up to a referendum. People voted yes and people were happy, but nobody had any fucking idea, well, what the fuck does this actually even mean? What does it mean for us to actually Brexit? Like, what's immigration actually going to look like? What's our trading policy actually going to look like? What's Ireland actually going to look like? Like, nobody actually had any idea what the fuck it looked like. They actually managed to do something because they did a referendum thing, but nobody had any idea. And I feel like the same thing happens a lot, even in the United States when it comes to policy. People complain about a thing, and then they have like a general angst or anxiety towards a thing, and then people get elected, but it's like, well, what the fuck are they going to do? And then obviously at the end, people feel upset that the politicians aren't expressing the will of the people, but the people have no like direction or aim or will towards any particular policy at all. That's what it feels like is happening. Yeah. Right here, 100%, and then wasted years of political capital rather than addressing other issues. Yeah, that's the issue. You're wasting political capital and you're wasting emotion. People have a strong emotion towards something and nothing happens. In the United States, this happened with Black Lives Matter. What did we need? Abolish the police? What? What do you mean? That's not going to happen. Defund the police? What? You want more training, more body cams, and less money? I don't know what we're going to do with that, right? Or even go back to even further. Occupy Wall Street. What did we want? Corporations aren't people? What the fuck does that even mean? Are we getting rid of their tax designation? What do you mean they aren't people? You know what? I don't know what the fuck you want us to do with that, right? And then people are mad. It's like, oh, Congress doesn't do anything. They didn't regulate or anything. Regulate how? What do you even want? You guys don't even know what you're fucking protesting for. Yeah, but this is a huge issue. It's so much energy, and people like Konstantine are directly implicated evil actors here because These are the people, ideally, I think in an ideal world, pundits are your connectors between the politicians and the people. They should be giving you policy positions to advocate for, or to protest for, or to vote on. They should be translating maybe difficult to understand maybe jargon, maybe politispeak or whatever from the politicians to the people. But they don't. They play their own evil, dirty role in this of being vague. Like a pundit today is indistinguishable from a man on the street. You notice that, right? When I debate these people and I talk to them, you just sound like a guy from Twitter. That's it. You don't sound any more educated. You don't sound like you have a better grasp on any of this. You sound like a guy from Twitter. That's it. You believe all the same conspiracies. You have the same depth of knowledge. You have no understanding. You're just a guy from Twitter.
Is what they're saying. So the Conservative coalition, it seems to me, is breaking apart along these lines, precisely because there are quite a lot of people in it who you might say have gone native or have been native the entire time. When you talk to Labour people, what they say is, well, the reason we're going to be successful is rather than taking the fight to the civil service like the Conservatives did and failed, we're going to work with the civil service, and we will see how that works out for them. I imagine that will work out very well as long as they're doing the things the civil service wants done. I don't know that stopping illegal immigration is necessarily one of those. So that's why my prediction is I think that all of these issues are likely to get worse, not better, over the next 5 years.
You touched on one of the other structural issues. It's financial.
Why did he shave the stuff? Listen, sometimes my trimmer, the thing gets fucked and it gets stuck in the thing. So when I did the first, I noticed that it shaved off everything. So I had to even the rest of it out and shaved off everything. Okay. So it's fucked until it grows back in 3 days. Okay. Let it do its thing.
I mean, in the end, economics is not about a sweet set of numbers, as one of our treasurers once rightly said. It's about outcomes for people, about prosperity, about jobs, about not passing on intergenerational debt to those who have, not yet taxpayers or not even born, because that's what Western countries are doing. It's unbelievable. We're not living within our means. We're demanding more and more and more. We're not prepared to pay more taxes, and more taxes would slow economic activity anyway. So we're asking even the unborn, and I know how you feel about that as the father of a young son. We're destroying his inheritance. Until there's some honesty around this sort of stuff, I don't know whether you can begin. And what I'm driving at is that we've got to be really concerned about populism and the pretense that there are easy answers, and I think that's very patronising. You and I were in a room last night here.
The anti-populist take. Konstantine. Have all the centrists switched to just full-on deep, like, glucking the populist shit where they are pro-populist now, like, avowedly? I feel like I debated somebody or I talked to people recently, and I feel like I've heard them say, like, populism was actually good. I feel like I've heard this now.
In London, where there was an incredible portrait of Churchill. And I always think that when he was elected, he actually said, I've got nothing to offer but blood, sweat and tears. He was brutally honest. And the British people responded. And maybe part of the problem is a breakdown of trust. They just don't think anybody's really levelling with them about what the problems are and what's needed. Well,
that's because they're right. No one is levelling with them. And when we talk about the success of populist parties, I don't think it is necessarily a good phenomenon that we are.
Econ time. How traceable effect does taxation have on the economic activity? Well, taxation is a very broad thing. I think it impacts some economic activity very heavily, and it impacts other economic activity not much at all. It really depends on what you're talking about. But keep in mind that the government has two sides of impact on economic activity. The government can tax, which theoretically should reduce economic activity, but the government also spends, which theoretically should increase economic activity. So it depends on what you're talking about, right?
Where we are, but I am actually very enthused by the existence of these populist movements to the extent that they're at least articulating.
Oh, there we go. He likes them. Good. Okay.
What you were saying, which is we've got problems we're not even prepared to be honest about, and let's actually spell some of them out.
Okay, let's spell some of them out. What is he going to say? I don't follow him enough politically, so I'm literally just spitballing here. Mass migration. What were the other things he was complaining about? I actually don't know what he'll say besides mass migration. I don't even know what the fuck. Let's find out.
Number one is we keep being lied to that we have a growing economy. We don't. We do not have a growing economy. Growth this year was 0.7%, so technically we're growing. But how is that achieved? I mean, one of the things that really I came away from was...
I thought that the British economy has been fucked for a little bit, and people generally accepted that. Is that not true? Do they use the 250 or the 100 more? Oof. Holy shit. $15.4% over the last 5 years. Oh no. Oh no. Ooh. UK, what are you doing? France is a little bit fucked too. Not quite as fucked though, but god damn. Oh, and this is just straight GDP. GDP per capita must be falling then. Yeah, yikes. God, look at the US. Look at us go! God, the US don't. It's never. I need this on my fucking soundboard.
While votes are still being counted, CBS News rates headed for.
I need a clip of him screaming it.
But folks, let me tell you what I literally tell every world leader I met with, and I've met them all. It's never, never, never been a good bet to bet against America.
Hell yeah. Anyway, sorry. Fuck these guys.
Australia fundamentally, with my views altered very significantly, is I hadn't quite realized how poor Britain is in comparison to many other countries, even in the Anglosphere. And I don't mean as GDP, because the UK has the sixth biggest GDP, we're the sixth richest country in the world.
Wait, is GDP warped due to currency conversion? Would it be better to look at UK's GDP in pounds? I've never thought about that before. Wait, GDP must be adjusted somehow for currency, right? My guess is going to be that every country's GDP is measured in their current currency, and then what I'm seeing is a conversion. That must be the case. For that, you would have to look at GDP, PPP. Wait, GDP, UK, and pounds. Would this look meaningfully different? Oh shit, I've never even thought about this before. It does look a bit different. Because the issue that you run into here is GDP, UK, because something that this graph could theoretically be showing instead is it could be showing you an appreciation of the USD instead, which I believe the USD has been growing in power, right? So the economy could theoretically be growing, but the USD is gaining more strength relative to these other currencies, so you don't actually see the economy growing as much. Huh. We need, I have this listed. Macro econ course, okay? After we chew through these, that's up there, all right? Or on the flip side, you could be measuring theoretically the depreciation of... No. Yes? Because GDP is just total currency in that country spent on a collection of things. Yeah, these could be currency measurements. Oh, fuck, I never even thought about this before. Oh, shit. Just pretend. Can we rewind back? Let's just pretend I never knew that. We're not going to ever get into that. Fuck that. That's too much. No one cares. Well, ban that chatter in YouTube chat. No one cares.
Apparently, except my views altered very significantly, is I hadn't quite realized how poor Britain is in comparison to many other countries, even in the Anglosphere. And I don't mean as GDP, because the UK has the sixth biggest GDP, we're the sixth richest country in the world, apparently, except when you actually look at GDP per capita on a purchasing parity basis, we are the 27th country in the world. I mean, I have friends who moved to Australia, who I met out there, who work in the healthcare system. They doubled their salary the day they moved. I was amazed to see the guys who work in your mines and drive trucks and do all those other things, how well they do for themselves and their family. They're actually able to feed a family of four on one income. That's almost unimaginable for people here.
In that case, what would the US look like if you measured our GDP and GBP? I imagine it would be exploding. It would be, no. Yes, it would be exploding, right? The US GDP in GBP. I don't even know if you can measure that. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. You might not even be allowed to do that legally, to measure the US economy in British pounds sterling. That's banned. That's a banned conversion. It's a banned measurement.
including well-paid lawyers and bankers sometimes even. So the first thing is the reason we have a huge influx every year of illegal immigration is that we are bringing people in who work for low wages in low-skilled jobs, who, as you no doubt have discovered when you pop into a coffee shop or anywhere else, there are no British people to be found working in them anymore, really, particularly in the big cities. And the reason is that we are importing those people so we can pretend to be growing. So we can say, so Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer can walk out there and say, we've got growth, 0.8%.
So the issue with this is that your economy is growing. When you add workers to an economy, you are growing the economy. Now, if you want to say you can pretend to be growing because you're not necessarily growing the economy for certain sectors of people or whatever, that might be the case. But then the issue that I have, the biggest issue is that usually these guys know nothing about economics, so that's already kind of fucking annoying. They haven't read a single paper on any economic subject literally their entire life, but whatever. I guess one question I have, now I'm not going to pretend to understand the British economy. It could be that immigration is hurting them, but just like at a cursory glance, my question would be, when I look at the UK and I look at the UK's unemployment is really low, right? You're still sitting at, my understanding from high school, so I could be, maybe this has changed, okay? My understanding is that the natural rate of unemployment is supposed to be at around 5%, right? So I think I've heard I think it's 5 to 5.5. I feel like that's what I remember, but around 5%. So if your unemployment is sitting at 4.4%, are more people coming in and working really hurting you? It doesn't seem like you have this huge spike in unemployment, or you even have like too much unemployment. So I don't understand what the issue is here. I'm not sure. I don't get it, but maybe there's there could. I was about to say, maybe there's some downstream impact that he's understanding but not articulated, but I don't know. I would just be curious to hear more about that, yeah.
And then, which, those figures would have been negative if we hadn't been doing that. But the question is that making us as a society more prosperous? Is that beneficial to all of us? I remember somebody was telling me about...
Our productivity is falling. Look up UK productivity puzzle. Sure, but keep in mind that productivity is just a measure of, I believe that productivity, I think, is the measure of the total value that an employee adds for 1 hour of work. I think that's productivity, is how much value you're adding to a particular good or service compared to the wage being paid to an employee. I think that's how you measure productivity, right? So if I pay an employee $100 and in 1 hour he's able to produce $200 of work, that output per hour is like very, 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 very high, right? As opposed to a guy that I pay $100 and he produces $105 of value, right? That's much lower productivity. So if you were to add on a whole bunch of low-skilled jobs to the society, then you're probably overall reducing your productivity because those are going to be less productive jobs on average. But if you add more high-skilled jobs, they're going to be more productive. But low productivity jobs aren't bad, and high productivity jobs aren't only good, right? Like my guess would be in the United States of America, if I had to guess, some of your highest productivity jobs are probably going to be people related to like Wall Street, right? People that do trading and shit, right? You pay these guys some amount of money, they can produce, luxurious sums of cash, depending on how well they do at their job, but that's not necessarily a good job. And if you look at low productivity things, probably like a lot of like trade workers, like electricians and carpenters and plumbers, like these people are going to be much lower productivity than white collar work, but that work is essential. We need these people in society. So one of the problems with economics is there's a lot of normativity. When I say normativity, I mean ethical weight. There's a lot of normativity that's ascribed to certain words like productivity. Like, are you productive? Like, if you're a productive person, like that means you're good and you're doing good things in society. Not necessarily productivity, it's just how much you produce based on, how much you're paid, right? Like, depending on how you would measure my stuff, I'm an insanely productive person. But like, am I? I work in entertainment. I sit at my computer, I scream all day. But the amount of like money that I produce, given, I guess I'm not really paid by a person. Well, no, I kind of am. I'm paid by my company. For Destiny GG LLC, I'm an amazingly productive worker. But, yeah.
A politician who went to a strawberry farm and said, well, what would happen if you didn't have the cheap labor? Because this is what we keep being told, we bring people to do the jobs that we need to do. And he said, well, we'd automate, we'd get machines to do this job. And that's how you increase productivity. we should be doing that. But instead, we basically steal all the bright people from Eastern Europe and elsewhere in the world who've got PhDs in mathematics and
So when he says, if instead of bringing people over to work, we just automate the jobs and that's how you increase productivity, he is correct there. But I think he's just saying productive in like people conflate productivity economically with productivity like just being more productive. Like the goods and services are going to cost more if you automate them than if you pay somebody else to do them, because if they're not automating it already, that means that the current labor that they're paying is cheaper than what they would pay to automate it, which means they'd have to increase the final cost of the whatever they're selling to, right? But whatever.
Medicine or whatever, and put them in to pick fruit in our fields. I don't know that that's sustainable for us or the world. So that's number one. Number two is we have an aging population and a unrestricted, unlimited commitment to taking care of that population.
Kind of the funny thing is one of the things to help with an aging population is to import more young people. Unless he's about to go on a whole spiel about how, well, this is actually, I know that it's failed every other time people try to make people have more babies, but this is what I'm going to say to make it happen. I wonder if we're going to do like a feminism and birth control rant.
Terms of health, without any way of funding that as that continues to spiral out of control. So our healthcare costs are rising. The message people are being told is, well, it's the evil Tories, they just don't care about people. When the fact is that the demographic trends are such that is either we're going to spend half our income on healthcare.
There is a chance that there's an externality involved in cheap labor, like if they receive government-subsidized housing due to low income, for example. Automation might be cheaper if all costs were appropriately counted. That's possible. I'm not going to deny that could be the case. There's no analysis of that given here, of course. However, I will say, and he's kind of getting onto it, and I think people are starting to realize this more and more, I think that Ben Shapiro was actually super correct. When you're talking about end of life stuff, let's see. If I had to guess, this is how I would guess a person looks like when it comes to contributing to. When it comes to making tax contributions to society, okay? I'm going to say this is 10, 20, no. Can we just go up to like 2 pixels? 10, okay, never mind, 4 pixels. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, okay? When it comes to, I'm going to say fiscal, okay, fiscal impact. So when we say fiscal, we're only talking about government budgets. So things could be economically good, but fiscally bad, meaning that they boost your economy, but they're a drain on the government budget. Or things could be fiscally good, but economically bad. So for instance, if we were to raise all taxes for a little bit to like 90%, we might say that that's fiscally good because maybe for like a few months as people continue to work, we bring in a ton of taxes, but it would destroy your economy, right? Because now people would stop working, they stop spending, right? So that would be fiscally good, but economically bad, right? When people say fiscal, they're talking about government budgets and spending, spending and taxing, or we'll just say government budgets. We're talking about economics, they're talking about the whole totality of like all of your economic inputs and outputs, okay? If I had to guess for the fiscal impact that children have, okay, it probably looks something like you're born and you have your biggest drain because you've got health care that the government might provide in the form of like Medicaid or other types of emergency services. You've got, and then you've got like all the tax benefits for the wife and the maternity leave or whatever gets subsidized there. Then you've got like the mom gets tax benefits or the dad or the family does because of the earned income tax credit. Now you've got a child. And so you're getting more money saved in your taxes because you've got a dependent you can write off. You still get EITC for having the child depending on what your income is. And then eventually, maybe you've even got more of a drain now because you're doing college or whatever, 10, 20, We get about here with 20. And then eventually you start working. And then once you start working, things change pretty dramatically. 10, 20, 25, we'll say like 30, 40, 50, 60-ish, and then you retire, okay? Now, I think what used to happen was, so the if this was a function that we could cleanly integrate, we would say that hopefully the green is bigger than the red, right? The green, if you were to add up all of the different points here and then add up all the different reds here, you would end up with a positive, right? Because you're contributing more to taxes than you took out as a child, right? And I'm probably overestimating down here, to be honest, as well, right? But then you end up in these later years where you start to consume healthcare, okay? Now, hold on. I don't think this happens immediately, but you retire, maybe you've got a pension from your job or something, but I think that this starts to slope off like pretty crazy, like pretty fast. And so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, fuck, I should have drawn like bigger things here. My guess is that this starts to look like this. The longer that people are surviving now, you're ending up with these people that are these massive fucking drains. I drew this too deep. It shouldn't be this deep. These people over here, bro, old people are consuming so much healthcare. The consumption over here is like is annihilating the economy. And the issue isn't necessarily that they consume a lot. It's that people are living so much longer, and we've got so many more healthcare services that we can provide to old people that we couldn't in the past, that these people are eating everything in society. Yeah, that's a rough one. I don't know what the solution is to that. You either spend less on old people, meaning we have to say, listen, grandma, I love you, but 76 years old, you're not getting the hip replacement anymore. Remember when Sarah Palin talked about the death panels? We're bringing them back, okay? Maybe grandpa doesn't actually need that quadruple bypass surgery at 86 years old. Maybe it's time to say goodbye to grandpa, right? Maybe it's time for grandpa to go away, right? Maybe we don't need to do the double radiation chemo plus, triple tumor removal surgery for Aunt Jane, who's 89 years old. Maybe she shouldn't have that operation that would be the equivalent of delivering like 150 children, But yeah. Ironically, the only way to get grandma and grandpa to have these operations. Also, by the way, while I have this up, this is why immigrants are, and when everybody does the economic analysis, like, how the fuck do immigrants help the economy, bro? This is why immigrants are so fucking nice, because you can, this is also why I get so triggered whenever I hear somebody, and I just immediately unplug. We'll be like, oh, immigrants destroy your economy, because you're bringing in an immigrant here. You're telling me Mexico wants to give me an 18-year-old? No, we don't have to pay for him to be delivered. We don't have to do fucking maternity or paternity leave. We don't have to do we don't have to pay for his fucking schooling. You're bringing this motherfucker to the country and he's ready to work? Yeah, hello. Yeah, this is why even illegal immigrants tend to be fiscally positive. Even on the government budgets, they're positive. They're definitely economically productive, right? Because if you're telling me that an economy can't take a 20-year-old working male and have him work, and that's somehow a drain on the economy, your shit is fucked so hard. So also, this is also why I get super mad when people say, oh, DACA kids, we need to ship them out. Wait, a DACA kid right here, when we've already made this investment? Not only do we not need to ship out DACA kids, we should be enslaving DACA kids. We should tell the DACA kid, you actually can't leave this fucking country until you're at least like 34, okay? Because we've already invested in this motherfucker's education and upbringing. Why the fuck would I want to send a U.S. educated child that's still better, despite our problems, still better than a lot of the world? Why would I take a child that was taxpayer educated in my country and then ship him back to another country? Especially if I'm racist, okay? Especially if I'm racist. I'm not giving the Mexicans, this fucking white educated by white Jesus, I'm not sending that child back to Mexico to be a productive labor input in their economy. Fuck you, he stay here. But it's, yeah, this is, Nothing that I'm saying here is controversial. None of this, you're not going to find, this isn't like a hotly debated economic, like this is just like very standard econ. When you talk about like that Peter is weird, who the fuck is the guy who's like, the demographics, this is what he's always talking about. Whether you realize it or not, this is what he's fixated on. It's the fact that we've got a lot of old people. They are so consumptuous of healthcare, and we're having less younger people that can foot the bill for them. That's the demographic problem when people talk about it. But anyway, sorry. But having like this understanding in mind, this is why it's just so weird and stupid when people are like, so we can't have any more immigrants, it's destroying everything. Like, how are you, what do you mean by that? Like,
rising. The message people are being told is, well, it's the evil Tories, they just don't care about people. When the fact is that the demographic trends are such that is either we're going to spend half our income on healthcare, and we're already well on our way towards that, or we're going to have to do something creative about that, which is...
What effect do remittances have on GDP productivity of immigrants? I think that you're getting into areas of macroecon that I have trouble explaining, but I think remittances ultimately are fine because I think every amount of currency that is spent in other countries has to make its way back to the United States eventually. Like if you are sending money from your country out to a person in another country and then they spend that money there, it's still denominated in your currency, meaning at some point somebody has to bring that money back to the US and spend it. This is supposed to be why now I'm giving you a very simplistic analysis, and there's a whole bunch of other external effects, but this is supposed to be why running a trade deficit isn't necessarily a bad thing. If I have a trade deficit with another country, and that means that they're holding a lot of USD, meaning they have to come back to the US and spend it. Now, there might be implications for why that spending could be bad. Maybe you don't want, for instance, Chinese investors buying a bunch of property or whatever, but this is why they have that money. It's because there's a trade deficit, because we export more to them than we import from them. They're holding a lot of USD, but they do have to come back and spend it eventually, which is good. But I mean, like there could be other implications for like security or whatever else you might want to, but it's things to keep in mind, yeah.
You know, to have some kind of combination of insurance or copay or something, we're going to have to do something. But again, we're just being told that this is an ideological issue, when in fact it's a practical one. The debt to GDP point you made is, of course, exactly the same. Our debt is greater than our GDP at this point. So when you have a government like the Labour government come in, they'd like to borrow and spend, but they increasingly can't. Because we have the highest tax burden since World War II, and...
Is the GDP or debt to GDP ratio UK? I think in the US it has gotten higher. 1995. Dog, give me more. I hate this Statista. The Statista website or whatever, a Statista is like the Pinterest of fucking... We have to be able to go back further than this, no? God damn, Japan, are you okay? Oh, even the US has a higher debt to GDP ratio right now. My God. Why would they have to come back and spend it in the United States? What's the rationale behind that? Because ultimately, US dollars are valuable because you can pay US taxes with them, and theoretically you could do USD denominated trade, or you could spend USD in other parts of the world. They generally come back to the United States in one way or another, right? I wouldn't be able to explain the full chain. You'd have to watch an econ video on that. Ask me after our macro econ courses and I can explain that better. I just know that people that hold USD in other countries, it tends to get back to the US in the form of external investment. But I don't know why necessarily it would have. I guess necessarily maybe it wouldn't have to, but.
Our debt to GDP ratio is over 100%. So on all of these issues, I agree with you. There are no easy solutions. It doesn't, by the way, there are no simple solutions, because we confuse those two things very often. Some solutions are hard and simple. But what they require, as you say, is honesty. And I wouldn't for one moment suggest that the more populist movements, including Reform or others, have a carefully crafted and perfectly costed manifesto. But I think the reason that people are enthused by them is they're at least willing to identify the problem, which is we're not growing the economy, we are using mass migration to pretend that we are, and we've got all these other structural problems.
Like migration grows an economy, it just does. Labor is an input to your economy. Growing your labor grows your economy, it just does. You can say that you're not growing it in the correct way, or that there is a certain sector that you want to have more attention paid to it. But when you say labor doesn't grow your economy, it's just one of the dumbest possible fucking statements. But it doesn't. That that beggars so much more explanation. Like, imagine you go to your boss and you're like, listen, I need a raise, bro. I can't afford my shit. And the guy's like, me paying you more money isn't going to mean that you have more money. Like, that. What? Wait, what do you mean? Wait, excuse me?
Problem, which is we're not growing the economy, we are using mass migration to pretend that we are, and we've got all these other structural problems that we're completely unwilling to address. So yes, more honesty is needed, and you're completely right, John. It seems to me politicians, and look.
Would it be possible to regulate the video volume down or yours up? Is the video too loud? Hold on.
You know, it's hard to blame just them because we live in a media ecosystem which punishes people for telling the truth. And that's a massive worry to me because, you know, take the case of Sarah Braverman. I don't agree with everything she says, but she was sacked from government for telling the truth about two-tier policing, about the fact that we had marches in which people were chanting for jihad and nothing was being done about it, about the fact that the government...
I don't know anything about this. I hate it when they do their talking points about certain things that have happened because I haven't studied these, and every time I look into any of them, they're always wrong, but...
Government under Rishi Sunak was unwilling to tackle the small boats in the way that it should have been, etc., etc., etc. And now, when I talk to other people in the Conservative Party, well, they say, well, Suella could, you know, she's discredited herself because, yes, she may be right on the point, but when you give the...
I feel like that Japan stat just proved everything you just went through. Maybe, but we don't know. Maybe, but we don't know. I can't explain all of Japan's economic situation. Remember what I said 2 days ago? Always be careful, or maybe yesterday. Always be careful taking one number and extrapolating a ton from that. Okay, debt to GDP is just telling you how much debt your country has to the GDP, the gross domestic product, it's currently producing. There could be these numbers could be fluctuating at any point in time. I've heard this, but this is like, I haven't dug into this, so I wouldn't say this with any level of confidence, but I've heard that Japan has a huge issue with a highly aging population that is very top heavy. I don't know how true that is or not though. Japan demographics by age. I do know that another issue that Japan has though is they also, I believe they heavily restrict immigration. Statista, yes. What do these normally look like? U.S. demographics by age. Jeez, damn, look at that big old, look at this, look at that, oof, look at that, looking a little thin there, look at how meaty and big our working population is. Hell the fuck yeah. Can you explain how debt is good for the U.S. and to whom we are in debt to? Okay. Debt, the reason why debt is good, let me just reread this. There's a concept called net present value. And the net present value of an actual dollar can be lower than investing it into something else. So when you're making an investment, it should be an NPV positive versus an NPV negative, or just holding cash would be NPV negative, hopefully. I bet there's going to be like an Investopedia thing on this, so I can explain this more coherently, but just give me the top. The difference between the present value of cash inflows and the present value of cash outflows over a period of time. NPV is used in capital budgeting and investment planning to analyze the profitability of a projected investment or project. When people say that wealthy people use debt differently than poor people to make money, okay, what people are saying is that when wealthy people send out their dollars, they're using their dollars to make more dollars. Usually when poor people send out dollars in the form of debt, they're just buying like highly rapidly depreciating goods or services. That's it. They're just buying things that become worthless after consumption, right? So if I have, let's say that I'm holding $1 million, okay? If I'm holding $1 million in cash, let's say that $1 million in cash, we'll represent it with, we're gonna put it in green. No, we're gonna put it in orange. This is $1 million in cash. This is what we would expect that $1 million of cash to look like over time, okay? And why would our $1 million look like this over time? Because of, and then everyone in chat says, inflation. Yes, true. Okay. So when we have money right now, what we're looking to do with it is like, okay, well, if I hold on to my $1 million here, I could hold on to the $1 million here. Let's assume that, okay, I'm going to draw 2 lines for this. All right. Fuck. No. How would we do this? I'm going to draw lots of lines. Okay. Get ready. Let's assume that these are the current assets that we're holding. Okay. And then let's assume that, these are the assets and the debt we have. Okay. So let's say that the orange guy, he has $1 million. All right. The guy with the $1 million he's got 1 million in cash, nominal, meaning not adjusted for inflation, nominal, just $1 million. It's marked. He's got a $1 million bill. He holds this for, we'll say 20 years. Okay. He has $0 in assets. He has $0 in debt, right? Okay. Well, seems like the guy's doing really good, right? He's got $1 million cash. Maybe by the end here, it's lost some value in other indexes, but he's still got $1 million by the end, but he's got no assets and he's got no debt. Okay. Well, what we could do instead is we could take a guy who, we'll do green because green is awesome. Okay. What this green guy could do is he could take all of his money, and instead of just holding on to it, we'll say that he invests the money. So now he has $0. Okay. He invests the money and we'll say now he has $0, but we'll say that because he invested that money, now he has an asset, okay, that's worth this much. But because the asset is a little bit more resistant to inflation because it's an asset and it will inflate in value as opposed to, technically you say deflated value. No, you say inflated value. The value will increase, appreciate, okay, over time, right? So this guy, we'll say he bought a house, okay? Rather than sitting on $1 million as just cash, he spends all of his money and then he acquires an asset, okay, for $1 million. And at the end of this 20 years, okay, he still has no cash because he spent all of it, but we'll say he's got an asset that's worth, $1.2 million, right? So this guy who's like, I'm going to put all my money under my pillowcase. I don't want to spend any of it. Fuck that. Okay, well, look, this guy who spent all of his money, look, this guy has an asset now that's kept up with or beat inflation. Okay, look, fuck you. You fucked up. You actually have less money than this guy because of the investment this guy made. Okay, now let's take, the super business guy, and he's going to say, not only am I going to spend my $1 million, I'm actually going to go into debt. I'm going to take out $1 million more. Okay, so now he's got this debt, and the debt might even accumulate interest. Okay, so he's got debt, and he's got debt that's accumulating interest. So the amount of money that he owes is more and more, but because of that, he was able to buy an asset that was worth even more than this guy, and now he's making even more money off of this, right? He's leveraging the debt, he's taking the debt, and he's employing that debt in a way to make more money than what the interest on the debt would be, and this guy's actually beating all these guys, okay? So not only does he have no money, he might have negative $1 million. However, at the end, let's say that he invests in the same types of assets that this guy does, okay? No. He doesn't have negative $1 million. We'll say he has negative $1,100,000. No. We'll say $1,050,000. Okay, because he's got interest as well, right? However, not only does he have negative money and he's got some interest on a debt, he has an asset that's worth, we'll say $2.4 million, right? So even though he borrowed money, even though he has no cash, even though he has debt and interest that he's paying, because he used that interest to further acquire an asset that grew more, the guy that took out a loan here is actually doing better than the guy that just spent all the money he had, and he's definitely doing better than the guy that just held onto his cash, okay? Does this make sense, like, conceptually? The reason why debt isn't necessarily a bad thing and why you always have to compare debt to economic activity is because if you have a highly productive, economy and you have no debt, people would look at you and they would go, why the fuck don't you have any debt? You're so productive. You can do so much. Why would you not borrow some money and make more money with borrowed money? That doesn't make any sense, right? This is why anytime you have a business and a business is performing well, the goal of a good business is never to remain like, my business is so good because we make a lot of money, we don't have any debt. Bullshit. If your business is doing really well, take on some debt and expand. Why would you not send out more money? Because the money that you're holding now, the cash that you have now, is worth less than the business expansion that you can make now if you measure the cash flows going into the future versus just holding on to the money now that's doing nothing for you, or maybe even losing value, right? And if you use debt, you can send even more money out right now that has a higher net present value. You get the money right now and then you invest it in capital. You're going to make more money going forward, taking on debt even versus the interest payments you make versus just not doing anything, right? Okay. All of that to say, so when you ask, how is debt good for the United States? It's good because if you're highly productive, if you've got good things to spend money on, it's better to spend the money and to even take debt to spend the money than to just sit on nothing and not grow as much. It doesn't make any sense, right? Oh, okay, sorry. But if you're an individual citizen and you just like use debt to buy a TV or a car, well, that's not making you any money. That's not an investment. You're not making, right? So it's different. So debt between an individual is different than debt with a business versus debt with a country, right? These are all kind of different. Yeah.
The media ammunition to attack you the way they do, and most of our voter base watches TV and reads the papers. They haven't yet caught on to this YouTube thing that you and I are doing. That's irresponsible, and that makes her very disliked, and that limits her.
Sorry, but this example, okay, now we get the well actuallys. Sorry, but this example only works in a booming economy, but the assets do not always gain in value, and the guy with the loan takes a bigger risk. That is true. In a very bad economy, this is great, but now we can connect these to other things, right? So in a really bad economy, right, what happens? People save cash. People do stock buybacks. They return money to investors. Why? Well, if I'm sitting on $1 million and the economy is really spooky right now, I don't really know if there are any good NPV plus projects to invest money into. So I won't. I'll hoard money. I'll save money. This is why interest, but hold on, but think about what we're saying, okay? Think about what we're saying when we say, I'm going to hoard my money. What we're saying is I don't believe that I can borrow money and make more money than it would cost to service that debt, right? So what do? Well, what if we made the cost of servicing that debt lower? That's why the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates. When interest rates come down, it becomes cheaper to borrow money. So even in a not as great economy, people are still incentivized to borrow money, to keep investing, to keep things moving. This is why the Federal Reserve will bring down interest rates when the economy is not doing as hot. And this is why they should raise interest rates when the economy is doing really hot, because sometimes you don't want people spending as much and investing much because it's getting a little bit too crazy and inflation happens. So you bring the interest rates up. But this is why the interest rates will fluctuate based on the economic activity. Also, this is very broad. Like my understanding of like macroecon is like bouncing off of the complexities at best. So there's going to be a ton of exceptions to what I'm saying, and there's going to be a ton of qualifiers and a ton of reasons why things may or may not work. But these are just like very general, broad. I'm giving you like this is the supply demand equivalent of like macroecon. Like there's a ton of things that impact everything that I've said here that would make things more complicated or whatever than it's just okay. I took out a 4,000 USD loan with 44% interest for a car. Did I do good? Anytime you take out a loan on a car, you should always ask for the highest interest rate possible because it makes you grind harder than possible. You should always be grinding. Is Social Security NPV plus for our country? No. Social Security is a massive drain, but the reason why we do it is because one, hopefully, it encourages people to work earlier on in life, and because two, we feel like we have a social and moral obligation to take care of our aging population. That's a moral, social thing we do. We shouldn't be looking at social. That's like when people say like, who was I arguing with? Was it Lauren and Sean when they were like, we should be taking money from refugees? No, we shouldn't. They're refugees, dog. We don't take on refugees and asylum seekers to make money. That's not what that's like charity for the world that we're doing. That's a humanitarian project. We're not trying to make money off of this. Same thing with Social Security. You shouldn't be trying to make money off of old people's retirement. That's a social obligation. Again, Social Security, right? It's to secure our old people. On your point about old people costing our country too much, which is completely correct, of course. Thanks for putting that in to assuage my ego. I heard an anti-immigration talking point that said that low education immigrants are a net negative because they will add less taxes during their working age than they will cost in healthcare/retirement when they retire. I think the main advantage they bring in is that they have more children on average that can be educated into a higher tax workforce. Those things might be true. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't know what the average productivity is. I don't know what the math works out to that, because that it might be true that because they're working lower wage jobs and they're going to consume probably similarly in old age, that maybe because they're working lower wage jobs, they end up being in like 80 years, like a net drain fiscally. But we also didn't pay to educate them or pay to take care of them in the first 18 years of their life. I don't know if that's a wash or not. I don't know where that works out. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, caught onto this YouTube thing that you and I are doing, that's irresponsible, and that makes her very disliked, and that limits her chances. So then if the incentive structure is for people to lie, then it's hard to see where the truth is going to be coming from, unless you have outsiders coming in and saying, these two rotten parties are not serving you anymore. And that's what we continue to do.
The issues that you rightly raise, you've been very complimentary about our country, but the truth of the matter is that our growth is anemic. And in reality, on a per head basis, Australia's been in and out of recession quite a few times in recent years. The maths tells you that what people are experiencing when they are told our GDP is growing and you're better off, they don't feel it. And they're right. The maths tell you on an individual basis. That's true. So it's the same experience. There's two things that arise out of that I'd be interested in your views on. One, it goes to the issue of trust again. Because they're saying, you keep telling me I'm better off, but I can tell you I've never had so much difficulty balancing the books. So it breaks that trust again. I think we misunderstand. In the end, democracy depends on trust. If it's not there, you'll never make anything work. The second thing that comes out of it, though, of course, is that the reason that governments, in many ways, are keeping these immigration intakes so high, it's not just that Aussies won't do this work or Brits won't do that or whatever. We're not having children. And that in itself is a big problem. We need to be honest about it. Many countries face a depopulation bomb, where, amongst other things, you're going to have a reweighting. And you're now talking, let's be frank about this, the Muslim community talking about politicising itself, turning itself into sectarian, or taking up the idea of sectarian politics, creating parties based on religious faith, here and in Australia. It's happening at home. And demographically, they're expanding very rapidly when the rest of the population is broadly in decline. These are very big trends. And at the heart of them, in many ways...
What would the effects of a UBI be on an economy? Nobody knows. I don't think we've done any good large-scale experiments on that yet, so it's hard to say. There's a bunch of theorized impacts, up to being very good to very bad. Who knows?
Is that we've gone into decline.
How much of the dissatisfaction with the economy do you estimate could be attributed to people with bad fiscal habits? You mean like bad personal budgets? I don't know. Probably a lot would be my guess, but who the fuck knows?
Right. These are very big trends. And at the heart of them, in many ways, is that we've gone into decline. We don't believe in our own future. If children are our future, we're not having them. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. But you've got a young fellow, and hopefully you'll have more. Why are people so negative about starting a family or find it so difficult? Any thoughts? Well, it's something a lot of people are grappling with. There's no easy answer.
No.
But you will have thought about it.
Well, there are all sorts of things. I mean, one of the things that is worth raising is there was I think he was a zoologist and a primatologist called Desmond Morris. Who
Let's talk about Muslim immigration. What do you think about it? Well, so let me quote this zoologist and primatologist. Let me quote the N-wordologist. This guy is a studier of, no, I'm just kidding. Maybe this guy might have good things to say. I don't know. I'm prejudging, my bad.
Things that is worth raising is there was I think he was a zoologist and a primatologist called Desmond Morris, who wrote a book called The Human Zoo. And his argument was that when you put animals into the conditions in which human beings now live, you get many of the same dysfunctions.
Consumer debts have been going down historically and being transferred to the federal deficit. I don't even know if that's possible. Consumer debt would go into the federal deficit. Unless the federal government had a buyback program for consumer debt, I don't even know how that would be, what the connection there would be. I don't know how you'd do that. Interpersonal violence, mental disease, all sorts of other things. So urbanization is almost certainly one of the reasons that we're having fewer children, because children on a farm are labor, children in the city are very expensive pets. That's basically what they become, right? They make you feel good, they run around, they're cute, but apart from that, they don't really do anything of value until, well, they're 40 nowadays, right? So... What? I'm sorry, hold on. Hold on, my brain was not in the right gear to hear that. I think what he's saying might be true, but my brain just wasn't.
His argument was that when you put animals into the conditions in which human beings now live, you get many of the same dysfunctions. Interpersonal violence, mental disease, all sorts of other things. So urbanization is almost certainly one of the reasons that we're having fewer children, because children on a farm are labor, children in the city are very expensive pets. That's basically what they become, right? They make you feel good, they run around, they're cute, but apart from that, they don't really do anything of value until, well, they're 40 nowadays, right? So that's the first thing, I think. And then you layer...
That's probably kind of true. I think people had a lot of kids back in the day because you needed them to survive. They would help you with work. They would help you for middle class or the aristocrats, they'd marry off into families. That's probably kind of true, yeah.
On top of that, of course, the sexual revolution, I know that you've had my good friend Louise Perry on to talk about it. I think the sexual revolution, we see that wherever prosperity and birth control come, the number of children that people have drops very significantly. So it's that. And then, the other thing that you, myself, Jordan, and all the rest of us have been talking about is, of course,
yeah, and a bunch would die too.
The spiritual decline of the West, the loss of confidence, the loss of self-belief. As you heard yesterday when we were just planning for ARC, I mean, one of the things I'm very keen to emphasize is no society and no civilization whose deep belief about itself is that it is evil is remotely likely to want to reproduce itself or reproduce its values. If we think we are the worst people in history, then why on earth would we want to bring more of that into the world? So I think it's almost certainly the technological and economic things are central to this, and then the cultural malaise that comes with that is another reason. And then we can look into...
Is there no threshold of manageable burden of older gens that allows an appropriate birth rate to replace workers? It seems like the need for migration is only going to grow and grow as they get older. Well, I think we need to find a way to limit spending on old people. I think right now it's probably a little bit ridiculous, and they're living longer. So you either have to extend the retirement age, which obviously nobody likes the idea of that, or you have to, we need to bring the death panels on and say, grandma and grandpa don't get the hip replacement when they're 95 years old anymore.
The decline of religiosity, I'm sure, has something to do with it. And layer on top of that something I know is a big issue in Australia.
You know what? There is one solution. They just jump. Boom. Easy.
And likewise here in the UK is a housing crisis. I mean, look, I'll use myself as an example. Before I became in any way publicly known, I ran my own small translation business, and then I was a stand-up comedian. In both those jobs, I earned a decent living, but no more. I'm a first-generation immigrant whose parents don't live here, who are not wealthy. So I didn't have the bank of mum and dad. I didn't have anything by way of help in any way. Our family was mostly a single-earner family for most of that period of time. My wife and I bought our first tiny little flat an hour outside of London when we were both in our mid-30s. The bank of mum and dad. I mean, look, I'll use myself as an example. Before I became in any way publicly known, I ran my own small translation business, and then I was a stand-up comedian. In both. I just never trust anybody that gives their background anymore. Every time I end up digging into anybody's background, they have like the best. But I don't know. Who knows? I can't speak. I don't know this guy's background at all. A decent living, but no more. I'm a first-generation immigrant whose parents don't live here, who are not wealthy. So I didn't have the bank of mum and dad. I didn't have anything by way of help in any way. Does this guy have a Wikipedia article? Is Clifton College boarding school? Is this like a wealthy boarding school? I have no idea. He moved to the UK when he was 11 years old. Parents, he was born in Moscow in the former Soviet Union. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know Brit Bonger shit enough. Our family was mostly a single-earner family for most of that period of time. My wife and I bought our first tiny little flat an hour outside of London. What do you think about his argument that Muslims are forming religious sects and getting into politics? If he believes this will popularize Muslim culture / Islam, that being anti-Muslim immigration makes sense. Sure. I think that Muslim culture sucks shit. I don't like any of that shit. However, the issue that you run into is Muslim culture as opposed to what? Because I don't know if it's quite the same in the UK. I don't know if it's quite the same in the UK or not, but in the United States, progressives won't criticize brown people, but conservatives don't offer up anything better. And the issue is that like when you talk to people like, okay, fine, let's say that Muslim culture sucks, okay? Which I think it kind of does. But then what are you comparing it to? What do you have? Can you give me anything positive about your culture besides white people? Because it sounds like you're saying the government sucks, all the people suck, your institutions suck, your schools are all poison and they suck, the media sucks, every part, you're saying everything sucks. So if you were a Muslim, well, fuck you. At least I got a whole ass history of like cool shit. I've got like one of the most modern, or not modern, but like recently developed like religions that I got strong religious people all over the world. There's a fuck ton of us. I got like a family, I got a mosque, I got all this shit going on. Why do you want me to abandon my shit when you're saying like literally every single thing that you're a part of is dog shit, right? Because people like this hate every part of their culture and society. The only thing that they're ever proud of is they allude to some vague shit in the past about like what? About religion? Like this guy is saying that like religion and spirituality is important. Motherfucker, you were born in the Soviet Union. Like, what does that even mean?
Like, so you come from atheist backed Soviet Union, and then you move to the United Kingdom. I mean, like, what about the whole fucking fight between the church of the fucking, who was the guy that wanted to get divorced from the chick that wouldn't suck his dick anymore, and then like the Catholic, like, there's just like so much conflict in your history relating to either atheism or religion. Like, is this really like a cornerstone of what you believe in and of what's important today? Like, I don't know. It just seems weak as fuck. Like, and it's never even like specific references to things about the religion, because none of these people grew up religious. There's also a thing that triggers me, because I grew up very religious. I can tell you really positive things about being religious or being in some sort of like spiritual fucking community, right? The idea of going to church every single week, that organizes community events, that has some integration with your local Catholic schools. It gives you a community of people to talk to. There's like, as soon as you're done with church, everybody always like stands around and they talk with each other and they jerk each other off, and the priest comes through and he talks to people, and then you can go outside and there's like the bulletin boards, and they'll tell you like, here's like this bitch is doing a bake sale, and this guy is like a fucking fishing club, and you can sign your kids up to these stupid, like, these are all these are cool. I'm sound like I'm speaking about this like dismissively, but I'm not. These are like cool things. These are cool community building things. I never hear any of these people bring any of these things up ever. It's always like these vague random things that they allude to, because it sounds like you've never been a part of a church before. You've never been in a church community before. You just like say it because it sounds good. I don't know. These people are cringe. I hate all these people.
When we were both in our mid-30s. And that was with great difficulty. With great difficulty, you know, and not to get too deep into the troubles of the Kisin household, but you know, my wife and I had many arguments for a long period of time about, you know, her wanting to be in London and where the action is and where culturally, you know, she's a photographer, it was the right place for her to be. And I was saying, if we don't move out now, we're never going to buy.
Wait, what? This is the guy whose dad didn't help him at all? Maybe his dad didn't help him at all. Dad was 20 when I was born. At 30, he was a millionaire. So his father was a millionaire when he got sent to live in the UK at 11 years old? Okay, but maybe he didn't help him at all, but whatever. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know his background enough to shit on him, but
a flat or a house or whatever it is. Now, if that's me, in my early 40s, what do you think the reality is for people who are in their 20s now? The house prices have continued to rise. Wages in real terms have continued to stagnate. So when we talk about, you know, we must encourage people to have more children, where are they supposed to have these children? In a flat share where they live with 4 other people? Is that what we're telling people? I mean, how many people are likely to reproduce in that? And again, I come back to the human zoo point. Animals do not reproduce in captivity in the same way that they reproduce in the wild. So if we're expecting human beings to act any differently, I think we're deluding ourselves. So the economic challenges, particularly around housing, are going to be a very significant contributing factor. They're not the only one, but I think, frankly, for me, we should be throwing everything and the kitchen sink at this particular issue.
I agree with that.
We have to be.
I think it's unbelievably important.
Yeah, or we can all die out, which for many people who've been persuaded that we're the most evil people in history, that you know the most important thing is to save the planet from human beings. Well, then us all dying out seems to be the outcome that they want.
This is a massive shift, isn't it, from the traditional?
True. It's all just part of the plan to depopulate the planet. Based analysis.
Judeo-Christian view that every child has dignity and worth and intrinsic value, to one with, oh, well, if we must, and if we want them, then there's some value, otherwise we don't want them. What's interesting in what you just said, a lot of older people and a lot of climate activists will say, well, the reason I'm having kids is because the planet's going to be destroyed, even though no expert with their salt actually says life's going to come to an end.
Are you saying Greta's not an expert, John?
Sorry?
Are you saying Greta's not an expert?
Do any centrists or conservatives that bring up housing prices actually support policies to address this, or do they just blame immigrants? No, none of them. Like if you bring on like if we were to bring on Lauren Southern and ask her, we're like, oh, Lauren, are you in favor of like mass public transit, building high rises everywhere, and dramatically increasing the density of like the housing construction that happens in the city? Like she would say, and everyone else would say, no. I think that we just need less migration and everything will be fine. It's like, okay, yeah. Because all of these people that are also mass opposed to like any kind of immigration are always like mass opposed to urbanization or like high density housing in general. Like they always seem, or at least everyone that I've seen talk about always seems to be the case. I never hear them talk about, they always talk about how cool it is to live in rural areas of the country or return to the earth to ape, or I don't know.
Well, no. Let's leave that one to one side. But it's an important issue.
Politicians answer that.
No, I'm not flabbergasted. I've lost for words. It does happen. I understand. I mean, I had a 75-year-old scientist of great standing in Australia. I was talking about the challenges facing young people and anxiety, depression. He said, look,
The cringiest part is those guys prescribe how people should behave to make society better, but people behave according to economy and not some weird instruction from grifter on average. If having a child is economically hard, people will not have children. Well, sure, but that's kind of what they're bringing up, is that there was more like incentive to have a child beyond just like doing it because you wanted to or have fun doing it, which is, that's a real thing, right?
5-year-old scientist of great standing in Australia. I was talking about the challenges facing young people and anxiety, depression. He said, well, of course, they don't think we're doing anything about climate change. Actually, I understand the research doesn't highlight that as a major issue for younger people in terms of them being worried about buying a house, in terms of having a job.
Can you rate their fit? I don't know anything about formal fits. I'm pretty sure this is an error where the guy's socks are not long enough to go under his pants, though. I think this is never supposed to happen, so 2 out of 10 for him.
Prosperity and having children. They're the things that are worrying them most. They don't see a real future for themselves. And they also live in a culture which has lost the idea of the intrinsic worth of the deep companionship of marriage and children and accepting responsibility. I think Jordan Peterson's right on that one. Picking up responsibility is a really important part of the human experience if you're to find your feet and look beyond yourself.
Oh, 100%. It was one of the things that really struck me from spending some time with Jordan and seeing, it was an incredible experience because until you see it with your own eyes, it's kind of difficult. Because you hear, oh, Jordan Peterson's got a book out, Jordan Peterson's doing a tour or whatever. We went to about 9 or 10 cities when I was with him,
We did 60 altogether.
You did something like that.
That's no mean effort.
And my point is, John, that when we were in Oklahoma, for example, I'm a huge NBA fan. I love basketball. I went the night before our show. I went to see an NBA game. There would have been 8,000 or 9,000 people. It was a brilliant arena in Oklahoma City. It was a good game. And then the next day, we played the same arena. In Austin, Texas, 10,000 people come to see Jordan. And the reason they come to see him, most people, again, didn't know this. I didn't know this, really. He's not talking about the culture war or politics or anything like that in his shows. He's telling people how to live a good life. That's what they're coming for. And ultimately what it comes down to is take on responsibility, be a responsible citizen, take on things that make your life an adventure and a struggle at once, because you're going to struggle nonetheless. So your life might as well be an adventure while you're struggling. And it's remarkable to see how many people come for that message. And I think in my own life, I remember that when I first became aware of many of the things that I talk about, the cultural decline, the slide towards some very bad ideas that are impractical and not working, I was very, very hesitant, like many people, to say anything about it in public, because I was first and foremost concerned about what would happen to my
opinion on invisible socks. What do invisible socks mean? I don't know what that means.
Comedy career and my friendships and whatever. But I've found that the more I take on the responsibility of saying what I think and trying to do something about it and trying to be part of other groups of people who are doing something about it, the more meaningful my life has become. And the same with having a child. This is something that, for all the very reasonable concerns that I explained to you about housing and so on.
Oh, no-show socks? It's fine. It just depends on the outfit, I guess, right?
People have. The one thing that I think we don't talk about enough is to what extent becoming a parent makes you a better person and forces you to become a better person. And that's not necessarily the only and the right reason to have children, but it certainly has that effect. And so if we accept, which I think we ought to, that there's a crisis of meaning and purpose, then my encouragement to people would be to look at where historically meaning and purpose can be derived from. And it can be derived from, I think, of making a contribution to your community, to other human beings around you, to connecting with the people with whom you are genuinely connected. Not people on your phone, but the people who are actually your family and very close friends. And this is why I think, someone who certainly thinks of himself as a liberal in many ways, I think one of the problems we've got is we have conflated the idea of political liberalism, which is the idea that you and I should be free of government interference in our lives, we should be able to speak freely, we should be able to associate with those with whom we wish. We should
Well, that's the theory. What it's morphed into, of course, is anything goes.
Well, hold on a second. Let's just stay with the political, right? The political arguments, I think, are pretty legitimate. We should be able to think freely, speak freely, research freely, practice religion or not freely, etc. But what we've done is we have taken that idea of freedom, maximum freedom, and we've now embedded it into personal lives, where it's completely inappropriate. The idea that the path to happiness lies in freeing yourself from the bonds that you have with other people around you is completely absurd. As any parent knows, the things that bind you and tie you down the most are the ones that give you the most meaning. And I think this is where Jordan's message is so powerful, because
I mean, there's no, I don't give him any credit for that. I was going to say, he's kind of right, but no, he's not at all. I don't think that the idea of the ultimate liberal, although it's kind of bastardized today, I've even said this a little bit, the idea of the ultimate liberal being a guy who's free from everything and can choose everything, and it has no lockdown to society at all, that's what liberalism is about. I mean, you could also argue that on the flip side of ultra-liberalism gives you the freedom to be locked down in ways that illiberalism never could, because now you have the freedom to worship whatever religion you want. You've got the freedom to whatever speech you're entitled to. You've got the freedom to whatever business you want to buy or run on your own. You've got the freedom to buy a house and live in there, for the rest of your life if you want to. Liberalism in some ways allows you to anchor yourself more than any crazy government restrictive policy or some other type of restriction ever could, theoretically, right? I don't think that liberalism is necessarily too restrictive or too freeing. It could go either way. I don't know if you would apply it as cleanly to your personal life as he is, but
What he's reminding people is that, yes, you live in a world where you have got absolute freedom comparatively to history from government interference in your life and so on. But unless you bind yourself to people who matter, to your community, to your country, to your nation, you're going to be completely unmoored and deeply, deeply miserable. And I think until more and more people start to hear that message, we will continue down the path that we're on.
That's gold. I think you're absolutely right. And of course, you could flip this whole thing around not having children another way and say that so many people not having children find that they miss that profound moment when you actually recognise you're making way for another human being and that somebody made way for you. You know,
and you're not the centre of the universe. You're not the only thing that matters. The present moment isn't the only moment worth caring about. And so the amount of pleasure that you've maximised for...
I feel like these people have never been to a parent-teacher conference or just never worked an ordinary job ever. This idea that parents are these like profound people that have this respect and appreciation for the world because they've managed to spawn a cockroach is just like one of the funniest. I guess, do neither of these people have children? It would make sense if they didn't. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. But if neither had children, that would make sense. Oh, you don't know anybody with children. You don't know any parents. You've never dealt with parents before. The idea that like you become a parent, you're like, oh my God, bro. Parents in restaurants, maybe I'm also poisoned because I worked in service, okay? Can be horrible people. At parent-teacher conferences, some parents can be horrible people. The idea that being a parent magically endows you with some or imbues you with some appreciation for history and where you came from is absolutely not true, but I don't know, whatever.
In this current moment is not necessarily happiness. And look, these are very controversial things to say in our society because we've become very stupid, but I think it's very difficult this is something I haven't said in public and I'm sure people will get very upset about it, but I think it's very, 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 very difficult to become a fully mature person until you've had children.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I really do think that.
Was Jesus not mature?
Based on my own experience and the experience of many people around me. It takes you to a new level. It takes you to a new level of consciousness. It takes you to a new level of appreciation of history, appreciation of the fact that we're all just passing through. We're all custodians of the past and of the future. And so we have to act with responsibility towards the future generation and the generations that are yet to come. And until I think, truly, until you are in that place, I'm not saying it's impossible, I think it's very, very difficult to really grasp the reality of the world until you're in that position. I really think that.
Thanks for saying it. You know, I had a moment in my life when I come from Australia where sharks are an issue. And for some reason, I live in a country you deal with snakes.
If you want to have children, and having a child, even one, can be one of the coolest experiences in life. There's a lot of unique experiences that open up to you afterwards. There's a cool moment that you can share with another person. There's the whole life beyond that and raising kids and all that. That's cool. But it always comes off to me as massive fucking cope when parents are like so obsessively trying to tell people that don't have children how inferior they are. You sound like you hate the fact that you had a kid. You sound like you hate it more than anything in the world, and you've spent the last 5 years trying to justify how much more mature, spiritually enlightened, historically aware, you're just such a better person, and that other people can't even it sounds like a cope, and it sounds like you fucking hate it. That's what I hear when I hear people talk like this. It reminds me on the flip side of child-free people who are like, anytime you have a kid, it's the worst in the world. I get to travel everywhere all the time. I don't have any problems. You sound like those people, except the opposite. You sound just like them. People that define their existence around having a kid or not having a kid are always come off as the most cope-heavy people in the universe to me.
Snakes and things all the time. 9 of the 10 most deadly reptiles in the world are Australian. They don't worry me, sharks do. And I realised one day that I would actually be able to step up if an occasion arose, if I was in a tank with a shark and one of my children, to come between them and make sure that I was eaten. You know, it's a big thing. And now I find I'm at a slightly later stage in life than you are. You do the same for your grandchildren.
Of course.
And it's a tremendously enriching and liberating thing to be able to actually start to take seriously, if I can put it this way, the second commandment, love your neighbour as yourself. It's a pretty radical idea. But we've said, no, love yourself first. Be God over your own life. And all it seems to, and the therapy culture reinforces that, by the way.
You know, John, may I argue, not so much with you, but this whole idea of, I understand Abigail Schreier's written a brilliant book about therapy.
That's what I've got in mind.
I know, but it troubles me that particularly in our circle, so many people are dismissive of therapy because there are some therapies that are incredibly effective at helping people improve their lives.
Is he about to name the dumbest therapies ever, or is he just not even going to name one? Oh boy, what do we even...
I mean, I spent, a month on tour with someone who's a clinical psychologist whose job it was to help people work through their problems. I think there are definitely elements of therapy where people are validated in everything that they put forward, and they're told that, what you're feeling is, you're absolutely right to, feel this way and whatever, instead of being told, have you...
going to reference any actual therapeutic models or understanding of therapeutic, or are we just going to say random vague bullshit therapies when you go and talk to a dude and...
considered that you could do this like that or stop catastrophizing, whatever. I have to say, I found personal development of various sorts incredibly useful in my own life. It's, it depends, I suppose, what you mean by therapy, but whether it's John Gray or Warren Farrell writing about how to resolve marital challenges and how to communicate better, or whether it's CBT, I know many people who found that incredibly useful.
Oh, okay. He does reference a modality. That's good. You got one thing in there. Okay.
or whether it's also all other things.
I don't know about the other two authors, if they're good or bad. I can't speak to any of that.
I think we ought not to throw the baby out with the bathwater when we talk about that.
And I don't think Abigail does.
Abigail absolutely does not. No, but many people in our space do. That's the only reason I picked up on it.
What she's talking about is when therapists turn it into an industry, often with the assistance, she says, of schools. I don't think I'm misrepresenting her. Sometimes without the parents being informed, and the industry is one that they want to perpetuate. I mean, if I go to see a cancer specialist, I don't want to be insensitive, many people have, but we've made such incredible advances that very often...
I don't want to be what?
Cancer specialist. I don't want to be insensitive, many people have, but we've made such incredible advances.
I don't want to be insensitive.
I mean, if I go to see a cancer specialist, sometimes without the parents being informed, and the industry is one that they want to perpetuate. I mean, if I go to see a cancer specialist, I don't want to be insensitive, many people have, but we've made such incredible advances that very often you can fix the problem and you move on. But her argument is that we're actually leaving people in therapy when they don't need it. We don't have an end goal.
100%.
We don't say, let's get to a point where it's no longer needed and we can move away.
100%.
And we also set it up in ways that allows children to think, well, of course I can behave like this because my therapist told me I've got X, Y, Z or ABC disorder.
Yes.
Do you think that that's a problem more with the therapists, or do you think that's a problem more with the parents?
It's a very valuable book. I recommend.
I don't actually know the answer to that. I feel like it's probably more likely the parents, but I could be wrong.
No, absolutely.
You've read it, obviously.
Absolutely. I'm not arguing with Abigail's points whatsoever. What I'm saying is, this is a very male mechanistic way of thinking about it, but your brain is a tool that was designed for very different tasks to the ones that it's currently engaged in. And I found it immensely useful to understand how to use that tool and how to reconfigure it to be more optimized for the world that we currently live in. And so I think more people should be seeking support and therapy, but with the precise description that you gave, which is you come in, you work out what you wanted to work out, you get better at whatever it is that you want to get better at, and then you go back into the world a different person and manifest the things that you want to manifest. That's certainly been my experience.
And mine, I have to say. I mean, I remember a wise man pulling me aside once and giving me some hints on how marriage should really work long before I was married. And they were invaluable. They stayed with me. I think early in my days in politics, a couple of older parliamentarians, whether you call it therapy or mentoring, I wouldn't have made it without them. Some people might say I didn't make it anyway, but it would have been a lot worse otherwise. And so I'm not arguing, I'm not pushing back against that at all.
Sure.
It's when you turn it into an industry. And when you, as I remember the title of the book, Why Our Children Are Not Growing Up. So what we ought to say is therapy ought to be designed to help you grow up, not block you from growing up.
Absolutely. And there are many people who do very good work in that area, helping people overcome things and then just move on with their lives and go and live a fulfilled life. That's really what it should be about. Whereas the thing you're talking about, dependency, essentially, of course, that's unhelpful.
We're in furious agreement. People ought to read the book, especially their parents. It's a good book.
Yeah.
She's done so.
100%.
I did want to go just to backtrack for a moment. Now, you've done those rallies. You've seen a lot of young people. I take it that when Jordan Peterson was tapping into the things that are concerning them, the things they want to sort out in their lives as they try and sort out their life journey, he wasn't saying to them that you're in crisis because your government is not dealing with climate change. Now, I don't want to sound cynical about environmental management, but there are two issues here. Yeah. One is, there is absolutely no doubt that in all of our countries, ours included, Britain where we are today, economic growth, i.e. the cost of living, is being impacted by the enormous cost of trying to move to unproven and unreliable weather-dependent energy sources. And the point I want to make out of this more than anything else, go back to our earlier conversation, is a simple one. Those who are advocating for these, whether they're Green politicians, Labour politicians, Conservative politicians, ought to be honest and say, this is not going to be cost-free. By very definition, high living standards depend on a lot of cheap energy, and the more cheap energy you've got, the better you're going to live. If you're going to restrict that, if you're going to move in other directions, you're going to impact people's living standards. I think they're beginning to sense that out there, and it's adding to the cynicism. I can tell you something in Australia. Central agencies in government, when we were there, any major policy, any minor policy, let alone a major one.
Okay, I turned down the computer. Okay, Jesus.
That involved major new expenditure would be thoroughly examined by Cabinet to see what Treasury and Finance were saying about the benefit-cost ratios. What's it going to cost? What are going to be the benefits? Even those central agencies now appear to say, the cost of not acting will be higher than the cost of acting.
Notice without ever a specific figure. They never say what the cost will be relative. They never give you the absolute figure.
So the people on the street, being lectured at by politicians...
Did he just complain about somebody not providing a concrete enough figure for something?
Saying about the benefit-cost ratios. What's it going to cost? What are going to be the benefits? Even those central agencies now appear to say, the cost of not acting will be higher than the cost of acting.
Notice without ever a specific figure. They never say what the cost will be relative. They never give you the absolute figure.
So the people on the street...
Saying therapy culture and shit like that feels the same as when people use the word science when they are complaining about something insanely specific. Yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, there might be an issue with therapy culture, I think, especially people weaponizing psych terms and shit and people feeling over entitled to stuff. I don't know if that necessarily comes from actual therapists or things related to social media and the culture around there. But also it feels like the issue is that sometimes these people... they don't have any good solutions. There probably are issues relating to migration in a lot of countries on the planet, the UK, the US, whatever. But then their solution is okay, no more migration at all. It's wait, well, hold on, that's not a solution. Wait, what the fuck? So then you can't take anything they say at face value. You can't take anything they say seriously.
Being lectured at by politicians and by elites are saying, I'm not so sure about this. I don't know that I can take an informed view because I'm not being told about the cost-benefit ratios. Nothing's being put before me. All I can see is my energy costs are going up and up and up and up. and my prosperity is going down, my cost of living is getting tougher. My point being, it's another breaking of trust. It's another area where I think the elites are setting themselves up for even more disdain from people everywhere. I think that quite strongly. And I just noticed, you actually had an utterly brilliant line. I don't think I've seen a better one. I just got to read it back to you.
Utterly brilliant line. He's reading a quote from him back to him. My God. Oh, my boner is exploding.
For the benefit of those who haven't heard you, you talked about the suicidal idea we call net zero, whereby we outsource our carbon emissions to other countries so we can pretend to be green while destroying our manufacturing industries and energy independence.
Holy shit. Do you think he's the first person in all of human history to bring up the idea that exporting the most polluting parts of your supply chain to countries that have less stringent pollution regulations might not be good for the climate of the planet? My God, what an ingenious... He might be the first, 2024, and finally we have a person that's figured out that maybe this would be a bad idea. My God. Wow. That's just bloody brilliant.
And by the way, on a per capita head, my addition, you have the products done in some other country, so you look as though your country's bringing its emissions down, then you import them back in. So the accounting system's wrong. If you're really worried about this, we should be accounting for your carbon footprint and mine. That in itself is a frightening prospect. But that's very powerfully put. This is the difference between virtue doing and virtue signalling.
Wow.
And no wonder people are sick to death of saying, well, virtue signalling is all very well, but it's costing me a lot of money.
And the other thing that they haven't yet worked out, which I hope they never do, but I think it's likely that we will, is the tremendous security implications of those decisions.
Yes.
When you have a situation in the UK where we effectively don't manufacture our own steel anymore, I mean, I am not a military expert, but I imagine that's a bit of a problem.
Well, I can tell you it is. I know enough about it from my own times on National Security Committee. But please understand, the key point I'm making here for those who are listening is, if you are a legislator, a politician, or a scientist, or a civil servant saying we've got to do this to save ourselves, honesty demands that if democracy is to thrive, you tell people the truth. It is going to involve significant economic dislocation, as well as those security risks you talk about. I'm driving at this issue that I think is so fundamental, the breakdown of trust, because of the breakdown of integrity.
Then why not tell people the truth about lowering immigration? You're going to pay more for your goods and services. If we don't immigrate, or if we don't bring in more immigrants, things are going to be more expensive. Why are you never honest about that? You want honesty from one side, but you completely dishonestly represent all of your own policies, right? You talk about steel, be honest about that. If you're saying you want to locally manufacture things relating to steel manufacturing, those things are going to cost more money. Housing is going to go up. That's it. Well, assuming that they use steel. I don't know how much steel they use actually in construction for housing in the UK. But anything relating to steel products are going to go up. Be honest about that. I don't ever hear that, right? It's always just, your policies are always good. They're always win, win, win everywhere. And the other policies are very nuanced and have a lot of drawbacks that nobody talks about. It's okay.
Well, if we're talking about honesty, then the central honesty this whole thing demands is that there is no climate catastrophe. That's the honesty that we need. There is no climate catastrophe. Climate change is happening. It will affect various countries in various different ways, but it's quite clear it is not the catastrophe that we're being told. It is a religious ideology at this point, which seeks to advance its tentacles into every area of our lives through religious methods. That's why they don't give you the figures. That's why the UN climate reports don't say any of the things that the media or the climate
That's a really important point.
They don't say anything like what we're being told is actually happening.
And no one's ever told that the modelling on what it all means is all low confidence.
Yeah.
So the Bank of England now has to take, as I understand it, climate change into consideration when it's thinking about interest rates. How do you do that? We couldn't get the modelling right on COVID. What are our chances of knowing what climate change is going to...
There is a pretty wide, what would you call it, wide tail. There's a lot of different outcomes that could happen, but haven't we been pretty consistently moving through one of the worst predictions in terms of the the global temperature changes? I feel like I think this is the current track if we do nothing or something, and then this is it's got a very wide tail, so it could look like this, and it could look like this, and then people are wow, this is very low confidence data, so what a joke. But I'm pretty sure, I think our trajectory through this has kind of been isn't our trajectory through this right now here? Are we on the bad end of this right now? Where it's well, we have low confidence. Okay, yeah, but what is that? What is that supposed to mean when we say that? But I don't know, whatever. Who knows? We'll have a few more melted airports in the UK and then maybe people take it seriously, but whatever.
Going to mean when the The ICPP itself says its modelling on possible impacts is uncertain and low confidence.
And that word modelling is central because we're being told that it's climate science. And when you think about science, what we're thinking about is...
Oh man, he's about to make the worst statements about science in the fucking history of all of science. Maybe he'll be wrong. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe he won't say this. Maybe he won't say what I think he's about to say. When I think about science, I think about measuring things predictively, and I think about having a very precise model that directly 100% predicts with high degrees of confidence what's going to happen in the future, especially in models that have 50 million fucking variables in them. Science is a process that always gives us highly accurate predictions in the future with high degrees of precision all the time, no matter how many variables we're accounting for. Maybe he's not about to say that, though. Sorry.
Is central because
I'm triggering myself with my own fantastical delusions.
We're being told that it's climate science. And when you think about science, what we're thinking about is if I pick up this glass and let it go, we know scientifically that such a thing as gravity exists and the glass will fall to the ground.
It's just the ultra ironic part is he brings up the one fundamental force that we actually have no accounting for scientifically whatsoever. It's like the number one thing that we cannot account for right now is how gravity even works. And that's the one thing that he goes to point to like our high degree of understanding of like, oh, well, you know, we have a really good, like, it doesn't matter. Sorry.
The climate stuff is modeling. Now, as you say, we've seen in recent years that modeling isn't always as reliable as one might hope.
And then if you talk to any science educator, the thing they will tell you is every single model you learn is a lie, okay? But every model you learn is a little bit better than the last one, okay? But that's it. Models are just models. Like generally they work to some level of predictability, but they're not always like ultra predictable. It just depends on what you're looking at. And like some representations, like believe it or not, okay? This isn't actually like a hydrogen atom doesn't actually look like this. You know this, right? It doesn't. This isn't actually in real life. If you looked at one, if you could finally fucking see one, it doesn't actually look like this, you know? But it's just like,
to put it mildly, and that's before you have political interests that are clearly involved in it and economic interests. There are people who stand to lose from the pursuit of net zero, and you know, I have no doubt the coal and oil companies don't want us to pursue that, and perhaps will deliberately be willfully blind about the impact of their pollution and emissions. But on the other hand, we have to acknowledge that green industry people have an incentive to amplify the scale of the disaster, or so-called disaster. So there is a lot of politicization of something that isn't actually science in the conventional, ordinary man in the street understanding of that word anyway. And so to pursue suicidal economic policy, people just, I hope that your team can flash up a graph that Bjorn Lomborg showed me yesterday of electricity cost in the UK, energy cost in the UK versus China, US, and other countries. And you can see that we are literally making ourselves poorer for ideological reasons. While, let me remind...
But I was never taught this. Doesn't gravity exist because of the pull of large objects? How do we not know where gravity comes from? No, you are right. That's why when your mom's ass gets fatter, my dick gets pulled into it even more. Over and over again. Hell yes.
Making that we are literally making ourselves poorer for ideological reasons. While, let me remind you, making absolutely no impact on climate change, given that the UK produces 2% of global carbon emissions. So we're making ourselves poorer, we're making ourselves less secure, we are making ourselves dependent on our enemies, in order to achieve nothing except one thing, which is the only thing that we now seem to care about, which is feeling good about how virtuous we are.
Another thing about Britain, I'm a great admirer of Britain. I mean, it exported democracy to so many countries, including my own. I still think it's the best way for people to govern themselves for all of its faults. And I wonder about seeing a couple of green shoots here that might be worth just seeking your views on. Are they green shoots, and will the incoming Labor government snuff them out or accelerate them? One is, my understanding is that the decline in British educational outcomes, the slide stopped at stabilising. You're starting to get some slightly better results out of your schools. That's a big issue in Australia because our standards are in freefall in absolute and relative terms. I'm really worried about it. We're not educating our kids properly. We're not giving them a fair start. And 40%, much more than in Britain, of our kids now are outside the state system as parents look for better alternatives. And I don't want to sound down on the state system, but I do think state governments in Australia need to wake up to the fact that the curriculum and discipline in the classrooms are a real problem. Teachers are sick of it. And it needs real attention. But what's happening?
Look on the bright side, John. At least I know what gender they are.
Oh my God. Annihilated those trannies. Oh my God. So fucking epic. So fucking epic. I hope we have time to talk at the end of this about the bioweapons labs and the Nazis in fucking Ukraine and all that shit. I hope because we all know that conservatives are the stalwarts of higher education. Thank God. What would we do? What would we do without conservative educators to tell us that the planet is 6,000 years old, dinosaurs don't exist, and we couldn't have possibly evolved from apes because they're still on the planet, and evolution works like Gen 1-2 Pokemon video games, okay? Thank God we have these defenders of education here. My God, thank you.
Well, I mean, that's a big issue in Australia too, don't worry. But that was the other one, the other possible green shoot. Just interested in your views. Hilary Cass's report into the clinics here, quite a few of them actually, that showed that the practices involved were dreadful. The affirmation model, whereby you dare not challenge even a young child who thinks they're trapped in the wrong body. You go ahead, you put them on puberty blockers. It almost invariably has led to further chemical and surgical transition procedures. And the whole thing's been a complete mess, but the Cass report has seen the government move very decisively to inject some common sense. Are these green shoots, education? And
Absolutely, and I think they're green shoots not only on that issue. I think it's a much broader signal of a tip of an iceberg that progress is being made towards the direction of sanity. And I said this would have been, I don't remember the year, probably 2022, the first time Francis and I were on Joe Rogan's show. And I said that, and I've been saying for many, many years now, the trans issue is what will break intersectionality. It's what will break this progressive delusion. It's what will break everything. Because once people can see with their own eyes what this ideology leads to, when they see children being mutilated, when they see adults abdicating all responsibility, including in a medical setting, then that would inevitably lead to a strong backlash, which we have now seen in this country. So I think that's a tremendous step forward, much more work to do, of course. And it reflects a broader public sentiment, I think, that the voice of sanity, people like Helen Joyce and J.K. Rowling and all sorts of others, I find it.
Thank God. J.K. Rowling, the most trans-obsessed person on the entire planet.
Heard. That's true in the UK and many other European countries, actually. It is less true in the United States for reasons that we can all... Well, there are many reasons, but the most obvious one, of course, is I think you and I both are great admirers of capitalism, but capitalism without any moral framework becomes a whole different entity. And so if there's money to be made from trans surgery, then which there is in the United States in a way that there isn't in this country, you will always find people who, for ideological and profit reasons, will continue to do it. And I know, this is anecdotal, but having spoken to people who are surgeons, that, if you or I needed some sort of heart surgery, the amount of money the surgeon earns is quite minimal, actually, a few $1,000s at most. With trans surgery, it's a highly profitable operation. And so...
Wait, in the UK, is that true? He wasn't talking about the US, was he? Hold on.
And profit reasons will continue to do it. And I know, this is anecdotal, but having spoken to people who are surgeons, that, if you or I needed some sort of heart surgery, the amount of money the surgeon earns is quite minimal, actually, a few $1,000s at most.
In Britain, or...
Trans surgery, it's a highly profitable operation. And so...
I'm sure what you're saying is right.
I'm sure it's right, of course, because fuck trans people, but... He said in the US? I know he was talking about the US before this, but like, what the f is he talking about? Like, you get like bounties for... Like, how many dicks have you gotten rid of? Like, I get paid off $250,000 by big trans in order to de-dick children? Like...
But it's as sick-making as the idea that people will make money out of killing other people through drugs dependency.
It's sick-making, true, but also historically.
Oh, yes, thank God, true. Remember how pharmaceuticals like get us addicted to all of these fucking drugs, and that's why we don't have any cures for cancers or any cures for these diseases that you... Oh, wait, shit, wait, that actually is the most retarded thing that you could ever fucking say.
Make money out of killing other people through drugs dependency.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? You know what the number one thing I would fight if I wanted to make more money off of drugs? You know what I would fight harder than anything else? I'd probably fight vaccines, because what a cringe fucking thing that you can get the ability to be immune against something without actually suffering the full disease. Because man, holy shit, I could sell you one COVID vaccine for $20, or I could sell you Advil and Tylenol and ibuprofen and decongestants and heating pads and maybe time in the hospital and put like...
That people will make money out of killing other people through drugs dependency.
It's sick-making, true, but also historically speaking, we know that is exactly how human beings behave when the incentive structure is wrong.
Should cause us to ask deep questions about the dual personalities that we all, to some degree, have to confront.
Well, of course.
We can be noble, but we can be scum.
And this is one of the things that I learned from spending 3 weeks on tour with Jordan. Is one of the things that he talks about is, I never really understood this, John, and I think it's very difficult to understand it. When he talks about how we're all capable of the greatest evils in human history.
We would have all joined the Hit the Youth, one of his lines.
You can sort of, you go, most people in Germany did, so I'm guessing but you don't understand the why. And I really understood the why when I was with Jordan, which is, it's all about the choices you make. And every time, his whole concept really, I think, is every time you do something you know to be immoral, when you violate your own conscience, when you lie, when you cheat, when you steal, when you do whatever it is, and I don't mean...
Is COVID vaccine the exception? I thought you had to pay for the other vaccines like the flu one. I'm pretty sure you have to pay for almost every vaccine. The COVID vaccine was initially subsidized. I think you have to pay for them now. I don't know if all vaccines are subsidized. I feel like flu shots and stuff are pretty cheap though. Couldn't you go to like CVS or Walgreens and get a flu shot for like $15? Am I making that up? I don't know if that's because they're vaccinated or if that's because they're just cheap to produce. I'm not sure. I don't know.
In these grandiose things, when I say...
If that's... Did I just say make sense? If it's because they're subsidized or cheap to produce, yeah, I'm not sure.
When you lie, I don't mean you lie to deceive the government of hundreds of thousands of pounds of taxes that you owe. I mean a little white lie. And then before you know it, the next lie you tell is slightly less white. And before you know it, the next one is even slightly, and so on. When you consistently act in ways that are wrong, you become a sort of person who does wrong things. And eventually, without necessarily meaning to, you find yourself in a place that you never would have imagined yourself being in. And I've had that experience in my life. You know, over the last few years, I found...
Honestly, if they were getting paid more for trans surgery, it would probably make up for the unique training / effort for that type of surgery considered done by less than 1% of the population. Sure, but the trans surgery people probably get paid more. But my guess is going to be, because people that do trans surgery, that's probably, my guess is going to be in the US, it's still probably largely cosmetic. And people that work in private practices or private cosmetic practices, these are probably some of the most paid physicians / surgeons in the entire US. That'd be my guess. That if you work at a private practice for anything relating to cosmetic surgery, you probably make fucking bank, right? We know this because that's why, didn't Taub have to take a pay cut to work for House? Right? That's my source. Let's see. Cardiologist. Oh, wait, hold on. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Occupation, Wages. I wonder if they break it down by surgeon. Let's see. We're looking at... No. We used to be able to do this. Okay. Subjects, pay. Wage data by occupation. Oh, nice. Oh, I love these. I love the websites where you think that you're like clicking a thing to load a new page, but you're not. You're actually just interacting with elements on the page and you can't actually load them in another page. I love that. Okay. Wage data. Okay. Oh, or does it just not? Or am I already there? Oh, no, wait. I was already on the page. CESO. Never mind. Forget it. Forget what I just said. Delete that part of the VOD, August. Okay. Occupational employment. Okay, wait. What am I... Where's the big chart? I hate these websites. It's so hard for me to navigate them. What? They always make you feel retarded. Okay. Data bases? No. Publications? No. Data tables? Yes. Occupation profiles? Yes. Healthcare? Yes. Here we go. Okay. I want to compare cardiologists with... Okay, so cardiologists are here. With like plastic surgeons are going to be, what would they be under? Oh, no, wait. A cardiologist is a physician. Sorry. Well, no, fuck it. They should, listen, in house, they could do all the surgeries. Let's just check real quick. We'll do cardiologist versus, if I want like a plastic surgeon, what do you think they would be under? Do you think they have their own Bureau of Labor Statistic breakout? People are saying it would be under dermatologists. Do you think that would be it? Bureau of Labor Statistics, plastic surgeons. I wonder what they would be. This includes plastic surgeons. Fuck. I don't know if they break this one out in particular. Dermatology can include a lot that's not just plastic surgery, so I don't want to include that. The mean annual wage, the average wage of a cardiologist is $423,250. A surgeon is $344,000. But this is going to vary wildly, I think, based on whether or not you work in like private practice versus if you work in like part of a hospital. So like, oh wait. So industry profile for surgeons. So if you work in scientific research and development, your annual mean wage is $167,000. College, university, and professional schools, 150,000. General medicine and surgical hospitals is 319,000. What is an outpatient care center? Do you think that would count as like a private practice? These national industries like occupational employment and wage adjustments are calculated. I don't know. This could just be like a place you get referred to for surgery, so I don't know if this would. Fuck. Yeah, I don't know if we could look this up, if the site would have it. Regardless, I would say that I think there is a huge issue with certain types of surgeries in the United States that might even broadly encompass trans stuff, but I think it's plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery in general. But I never hear these guys freak out about. Also, you want to talk about like trans people being trans? What about all the young girls on social media that are getting mind fucked into thinking they need, lip fillers, fake boobs, fake asses? Like, what about that conversation, right?
You would have imagined yourself being in. I've had that experience in my life. Over the last few years, I found, obviously I've had tremendous opportunity, but for example, when I was in Australia, I had not been exercising or eating as well as I should have been for months, and I felt myself putting on weight, and it started to bleed through into all sorts of other areas of my life. I was not behaving correctly with my family. I was not behaving correctly. When you slip in one area, it affects everything else. So incentive structures, which incentivize people to only pursue their own self-interest, irrespective of the moral dimension of it, will make normal people into terrible people. And I think that's one of the reasons that in America this issue is different, and they haven't addressed it in quite the same way. But yes, I think that what is happening in the UK on that issue is very good. As you say, we now have a new government, and we wait with bated breath to see what they do about that issue, because obviously, ideologically, Keir Starmer said recently, I think that Tony Blair's educated him about biology, so that's a relief. Of course, what that really means is Keir Starmer was a coward who didn't want to tell the truth about the trans issue. That's why he mumbled and stumbled when he was asked what a woman is, because he knows that within his party there are enough people with the delusion that that is a contested issue, which obviously it's not. So how much of a coward he remains is what we...
Medscape's annual physician salary, which you need an account to log into. I don't know what Medscape is, if this is the doctor website, but... Orthopedics, the mouth people, 558K. Plastic surgeries, 536K. Jesus. Cardiology's right there, though. God damn.
Wait and see.
Yeah, something I've never said it publicly, never had the reason to, but your remarks just bring it back to the forefront in my mind. Many years before I went to public service, I heard a brilliant sermon on how if you can be trusted with the little things.
Oh no, ortho is all bone. Never mind. I feel like the cost of those surgeries, though, must be, their wages have to get pushed up by dental shit, though, no? How many other bone surgeries are you normally doing that are costing more than... I don't even know what I would look up to find this. I feel like that's got to be largely accounted for by dental work. That would be my guess, but... Well, no, because how many ortho, physicians are doing the most profitable mouth work? Because you don't need... Wait, is an orthodontist is an orthodontist an MD? Hold on. Orthodontist is a okay, never mind. Orthopedics is musculoskeletal, and orthodontist is... Wait, what was I looking up before? Oh, fuck me. Never mind. I'm totally mind-fucked on this. This is orthopedics. I'm thinking orthodontist. Never mind. Okay. So you think if you were getting a hip replacement, this is the meme surgery I keep referring to, but if you were to do this, you'd probably be seeing an orthopedic surgeon, huh? What determines wages in America? The goddamn free market. There's a bald eagle that flies over your employment office, and he drops every day new wages to be paid to all of your employees. It's the freedom eagle.
Trusted with the big things. If you can't be trusted with the little things, you're not going to be trustworthy with the big things. And I've often said, got into trouble for it too occasionally, I have to say, to people who have said, why do politicians go in with the best of intentions and then they get produced and they wander off and become selfish and so forth? How do we try and choose candidates? I get asked that question quite often, but we can trust. And the very first time I was asked that question, I floundered around a bit, but the best thing that came to mind was the point I've just made. I said, well, I've always found in life if you can trust somebody, and if the people you know in your own circle trust you with the little things, that's a bit of the best guide I can think of as to whether you're going to be able to trust them with the bigger things.
No fucking shot. Oh, he's going to disagree heavily with this. He must be, because he's about to go on to talk about like all the different varieties of knee pads he has to wear when he's on his knees filleting Donald Trump over and over and over again. He's about to explain why, well, listen, even though a guy can have a horrendous personal life in every single way, this is why that doesn't actually matter for leadership. So he's about to disagree with them heavily on that, I think, right?
So as you toured those 10 different cities, I think you said it was, Jordan went to 60, that's an extraordinary effort. What gave you hope? What encouraged you?
Well, in addition to touring with Jordan, we also did a bunch of trigonometry interviews in all sorts of different cities. So New York, DC, Miami, Austin, LA, which is the big cities that we always hit. What gave me hope? I think, I am I'm extremely non-partisan and moderate when it comes to elections. What I see, and I said it, I wrote an article for the Free Press on October 8th. It seemed to me like that was a catalyzing moment in which many people would be lifted out of the delusion in which they'd been living and would begin to increasingly see the world as it is. We interviewed a progressive activist called Brianna Wu, who's a Democratic Party fundraiser, who is loudly now saying that the progressive movement has gone completely off the rails.
This is why I never, ever, ever want to be used. I never want to be used by these people like this. This is why I think I tweeted something out. Didn't I tweet something at this guy? Because I said that I don't consider myself a progressive anymore because I do think progressives have gone wacky. And then he tried to like hop on where he's like, oh, look, even Destiny realizes this. And I think I quote tweeted and was like, you guys are way more fucking crazy. I am never becoming like anything of what was this tweet? There was a response that we had back and forth about this. I think it was him that did this. I don't ever, ever want to be lumped in with these fucking lunatics. Don't make me bitch slap you again. What, bro? What are you talking about? Fuck. Was it Jordan? People are saying it was Jordan Peterson. Was it? I thought it was this guy. Oh, yeah, he tried to do this. He tried to use me as one of these here. I'm pretty sure. Destiny's driving the Progressive Left Association because how trash the community is. This is the correct take. It's a few years after many of us, but it's great to see nonetheless. And great to see Brianna Wu endorse this. Fuck no. Just to be crystal clear, my take has absolutely nothing to do with the group of anti-establishmentarianists who believe vaccines are fake, climate change isn't real, the elections are rigged, and the mainstream media takes marching orders from the deep state. If anything, progressives have increasingly taking on positions similar to these anti-institutional, anti-liberal stances, which is why I'm abandoning the label. If anything, they're becoming more similar to the intellectual dark web types than anything else. Fuck this guy. Yeah, fuck this. I don't ever want to be used by these fucking losers.
Loudly now saying that the progressive movement has gone completely off the rails. And I see in the United States among, this is, New York is a good example of this. New York is a city for business. The people in New York generally vote for the Democrat. Because they're socially liberal and all the rest of it. I see, Bill Ackman, for example, I had an opportunity to spend some time with him. He's clearly completely woken up to everything that's going on. He started to realize that many of the things that he believed over the last many years were lies, including things that were said about Donald Trump. And I think while I am no huge admirer of either of the two candidates that are running in this election, I have to say, I think after the first debate that we saw, I would consider that a moment of clarity. And I think people need to recognize now that the choice is between someone who...
Oh, this was probably 3 weeks ago. This is recorded before the drop and everything. I wonder if he's going to say, Do you think he's going to say a single bad thing about Trump at all? A single bad thing about Trump? Let's see. Let's go. Let's hear it.
While I am no huge admirer of either of the two candidates that are running in this election, I have to say, I think after the first debate that we saw, I would consider that a moment of clarity. And I think people need to recognize now that the choice is between someone who they may disagree with politically, but who is capable of wielding the tremendous power that office holds, and someone who's not. And while I try to really stay out of electoral politics and not give my particular take, I have to say, I think a Trump presidency would be infinitely better than what we've had for the last 4 years. Not because I agree with every policy position or the style or any of the rest of it, but
I like it. I don't agree, but it's always vague bullshit. They'll never actually say anything that they disagree with.
I just think the leader of the free world should be capable of discharging those duties.
Do you think now that Kamala has stepped in, do you think now he's critically reevaluated his position?
And so to the extent that it seems like President Biden, or whoever it is that runs in the state, is likely to lose, then that's a moment of hope for me, because I think there's some big problems in the world that need fixing. And
is Donald Trump going to fix those problems?
While I think it's true that there will be a huge meltdown in the media and elsewhere if President Trump's reelected, I think in Ukraine, which is an issue that I care about, as you know, and in many other parts of the world, I think he will do a better job.
What is Donald Trump going to do in Ukraine? Didn't Donald Trump, didn't he make, now I'm not going to hold Donald Trump to this statement because you can't take him seriously or literally on literally anything. Didn't Donald Trump make a statement where he's like, fuck, what did he say about it? It was something retarded as fuck. That's all I remember. Putin says he thinks Trump is sincere about ending the Ukraine war. Well, yeah, he probably wants to end it and keep the land that he has. WAPO reported in April that Trump had privately spoken about the option of allowing Putin to keep Crimea, which Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014, and the Donbas area, which Russian forces partially control, in return for peace, something Trump's campaign has not yet confirmed. I guess technically he would probably like Trump's stance on Ukraine, because Trump's stance on Ukraine is to let Russia win, basically, no matter what. This is what he wants, is Russia to win. So I guess technically he would actually support Trump here. It's just in a roundabout way.
At least likewise. The world needs authority right now. The world needs someone to come in and say, everybody back to their corner.
And that happened under Trump? Like,
I'm not putting up with this anymore. I think we've had too much weakness displayed from the United States, and irrespective of people's personal distaste for him, I think President Trump will bring that.
What can you give me one example of that? Like, he didn't stop the nuclear tests in North Korea. He didn't stop the nuclear weapons that Iran was pursuing. He didn't do anything when Iran bombed when Iran bombed Saudi Arabia for the first time ever in all of fucking history. He encouraged the moving of the embassy in Israel, which didn't do anything except stoke tensions between Israel and Palestinians. What stopped? The Syrian civil war didn't stop. Russia didn't pull out of Crimea. The civil wars in southeast Ukraine, you shouldn't even call them civil wars, didn't stop. The ongoing conflict in Yemen didn't stop. He signed a peace treaty with the Taliban, completely excluding the Afghanistan government. Like, what do we... He said previously Russia moves in and takes territory, then asks for peace negotiations where they keep the new territory. Can you give me an example? The two that I'm familiar with are Georgia and Moldova.
All right, let's just pick up a couple of those issues as we land the plane. Firstly, the world is a very dangerous place. You and I had a serious conversation shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine, because you understand all of that so much better and had insights no one else did, and our listeners were incredibly interested in it. A couple of years on, you've had a lot of stalemate. The last time you and I talked, you were very pessimistic because America had withdrawn, or it was uncertain as to whether America would go on supporting. They've stepped up, they're back in. NATO appears in some ways now to be doing a little bit more, providing some funding. It's quite surprising who in Europe is doing some of the heavy lifting, even little Denmark. It's quite surprising what they've done. And so the tables look to me to be turning a little bit in Ukraine's favour again.
Oh boy. Moscow-born Konstantine, is he going to bear this? Or are we going to go back to the old talking points of Ukraine can't win? It's just encouraging the war to drag on. More young men are being thrown into the meat grinder. And then maybe we can make an allusion to some of the stories about there are some people that are avoiding conscription, so we know that this whole war is bad. Maybe? Let's see what we got.
And I'd be interested in your views on that. I'd also be interested in your views on the state of military preparedness, because I've been really struck by the newspaper coverage in Britain while I've been here, senior people warning that the world is very dangerous and all Western countries need to step up and get more serious about defence, and that Britain's military is very underprepared. It's run its stocks of ammunition down, trouble recruiting people. Your general observations?
So on the Ukraine point, I'm afraid I remain pessimistic. And the reason is that I think when you say America has stepped up or NATO has stepped up, we are not providing a decisive advantage to the Ukrainians. We are doing what we have been doing for some time now, which is giving them enough support so they don't get overrun, but not giving them enough support so they can actually make forward progress. And of course, in the meantime, this is very clinical language when we're talking about human lives, but the manpower reserves and the reserves of well-trained soldiers are running down. On my flight back from Australia, where I had the chance to spend some time with you, I was there with a British soldier, officer, who works in, I don't want to reveal the details, but he was basically saying to me that, we are currently focused on providing the most simple kit that we can, because the people who are using it may have been training for a week or two. So we are not giving them what they need to win. We're not giving them what they need to make significant forward progress. And from that perspective, if you care about Ukrainians...
Yeah, do the one now. Yeah, if you care about Ukrainians now, you care about all the people being killed. Maybe we'll use the meat grinder thing.
Then the right play, in my opinion, still remains to find a way to bring the conflict to a resolution. Unless there is a dramatic change of policy in the West where... we're willing to allocate significantly more resources to that conflict, which I think is unlikely.
We may not even have it. You read the press here. They haven't even got the reserves of ammo.
And I was coming to that very point, which is, in order to support Ukraine, we have to ramp up our production of all of these things at home, and we haven't done that. So whatever we feel about what we'd like to do, we may not be in a position to do so. Now, the reason I'm optimistic, in a sense, for the conflict being resolved somehow is that I think if President Trump is re-elected, then he's one of the few people in the world who could come in and actually secure a good deal for Ukraine. And the reason I say this, a good deal in the current circumstances, to be clear. The reason I say this is the way to negotiate, I would imagine, you tell me more with your experience, but the way I imagine you might negotiate in the situation is you have to say two things to Putin at the same time.
Stop fighting or we're going to blow you up?
Number one is we recognize the fact that you have made forward progress in Ukraine. You have occupied territory, and we are willing to make concessions on that basis. Right?
But
that's the reality on the ground. There is no other way around it. On the other hand, if you do not accept these fairly limited concessions we are offering you now, if you don't accept these fairly limited concessions we're offering to you now, we will give Ukraine everything. Everything we've got. We're going to ramp up manufacturing. We're going to not just give them artillery shells. We're going to give, and not HIMARS, which is fairly dated technology, actually. We're going to give them the good kit. We're going to give them lots of it. If you do not take this deal now, this will be the best deal that you ever been offered. That is a difficult line to tread, given...
If we have the ability to ramp up and all that, why wouldn't we just do that? Why would you acquiesce to them at all?
Where some of our reserves and public sentiment are, but that's, I think, what it takes. So I sadly think that as the West, we're not doing enough to help the Ukrainians win, and we should be honest with ourselves about that and with them, because otherwise all we're doing is causing more people to be killed on both sides. Now, a very cynical person might say, well, that's what the West really wants, is to damage Russia, and they don't care about Ukraine. I care about Ukraine, and I don't think that's what we should be doing.
Okay.
I think that's a good thing for people to hear.
We didn't hit the stories about the conscripts trying to draft dodge, at least.
Let it sit and think about, me included. It's pretty sobering. It's astonishing to me that Russia persists when we're now told they may have lost 500,000 young men. Unbelievable.
Do we think that what is Konstantin tweeted in relation to the current push that Ukraine is doing? What do you think he's tweeted?
Russia persists when we're now told they may have, and think about, me included. It's pretty sobering. It's astonishing to me that Russia persists when we're now told they may have lost 500,000 young men.
Is he talking casualties or deaths? 500,000.
Unbelievable. That just shows you how distorted and how bad people can actually be to let that continue.
It's a cultural thing as well, John. I think we talked about it last time. But if you look at the casualties in World War II, for example, the Soviet Union lost 20 million people.
Do you think is he going to be critical of Republicans for blocking more support to Ukraine, do you think? Or
look at the wars with Finland, for example, in which the Soviet Union invaded, lost hundreds of thousands of men for very little territorial gain or any practical gain, really. This is, in Russian culture, in Russian kind of mythology, the idea of sacrificing lots of soldiers for the greatness of Russia.
Is he going to be critical of Republicans? So when Brianna Wu had her conversation with them a couple of months ago, she brought that up. She mentioned that Republicans were stonewalling legislation in terms of funding Ukraine, and he just sidestepped it. So no, I don't think. I mean, I haven't seen this whole fucking thing, but there's no question he'll completely sidestep it.
Oh, crazy! Moscow-born Konstantin doesn't want to speak to supporting Ukraine. Okay, makes sense.
But he's a centrist because remember, he says he disagrees with Trump on some things.
That's good.
He didn't go
whatever
into
those
any
things
detail
are.
whatsoever.
But, yeah, probably the vaccine and warp speed, but okay.
Yeah. So the thing that the frustrating thing about this is when he says in the beginning, when they turn the topic to Trump, he says that Bill Ackman, who is a billionaire, he's like, this guy used to be liberal, used to be progressive, but now he's a Trump supporter, and he's become so disillusioned because he recognizes all these lies about Donald Trump. I've noticed when it comes to centrists talking about lies about Donald Trump or their disagreements with Donald Trump, they never elaborate. They never give any examples about what we're lying about when it comes to Trump.
It's always it's like little things in the media, or it'll be like, oh, that time they said that he threw all the fish in with the Japanese emperor or president or whatever, or it'll be like Russiagate. They'll just say like a broad thing. That's the only thing they say. But they never talk about what about all the lies that Democrats or what about all the lies that Republicans say about Democrats? That doesn't move you one way or another ever. Like Donald Trump is literally right now in Truth Social retweeting literal fake AI images, trying to say that the Harris campaign was passing these off as real. Like that doesn't bother you at all? Yeah.
Yeah, not to totally throw DGGer and so-called principled libertarian Lactoid under the bus, because I do like Lactoid. I like sparring with him, but like every other libertarian, he's definitely more of a Trump supporter than not. Mm-hmm. That's the thing I find. The so-called centrists and so-called libertarians, they'll bitch about any sort of like Russiagate's a good example yet, because people say that was a lie. Well, it wasn't a lie. There were strong connections between the Trump campaign and Trump administration with Russia. And I even go so far, there was no proof of I guess
no spoiler alert, because we are going to read that Mueller report. That is on the agenda. But go ahead.
Yeah, but like even when they say, Stephen, that he didn't conspire with Russia. Okay, you're right. There's no proof of that. But I'm sorry, when he's publicly asking Russia to hack the DNC or to look for Hillary's emails, I know they try to spin it as a joke, but I do think that that's something that should be held against Trump. I'm not saying necessarily criminally.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just so fucking infuriating that he is always graded on a curve. Now, this is 3 weeks old, so I don't know how he feels about Vice President Harris, but I guarantee you, if you were to look through his Twitter feed, he has nothing positive to say about
what?
The Vice
You don't
President.
think he's praising the fact that we have a much younger person now who's nominated? You don't think he's praising that? You don't think that he's obviously choosing her?
No, and even at the risk of potentially pissing them off, because they don't like when they're brought up here, but I'm going to throw Adam from Sitch and Adam under the bus here, because Hutch and I had a conversation with him recently, Sitch and Adam both, about Trump versus Biden. It was before Biden dropped out, and Adam said, well, I'm supporting Trump, or I'm going to vote for Trump because of the cognitive decline of Biden, if for nothing else. And when we tried to press him on this, he really didn't want to be interrogated on it, even though he made an affirmative claim as well. Mm-hmm. He's like, it's just democracy. You can vote however you want. And I remember asking him, and I think even Hutch did too, okay, let's say Biden steps down. Are there any Democrats that you would support over Trump, right? If the only issue is age and cognitive decline, let's say a younger Democrat comes along, and of course he wouldn't commit to it. And now that's the reality, as far as I know, he blocked me, but as far as I know, he still hasn't walked it back. So I do not believe that there is such a thing in American politics as a true centrist. I've never seen a centrist where they bitch about Trump in equal measure. Like Dave Smith, I think Joe Rogan gave him a shout out recently after Rogan.
I saw, yeah.
But I've never seen Smith really complain about Trump, and certainly not when the conversation is about Trump versus a Democrat. He may in a vacuum.
Well, somebody did link in 2022, he was very upset that Trump still had foreign policy where the United States had any military. So, he did have that criticism, which is good.
Okay, so let me ask you then: have you encountered a centrist that will criticize Trump, but obviously we're finding centrists who have bigger issues with the Democrats than Trump? Have you ever found a centrist where it's the opposite, or they're like, you know what, fuck, I really don't like Joe Biden, but there's no way in fuck I'm going to support Donald Trump? That somebody basically who is
These
a Biden
people don't exist. Yeah, they don't exist.
Yeah. Ridiculous. All right, buddy. Well, you enjoy the rest of the conversation.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, see you. Bye.
For the nation is pretty normal. And by the way, it used to be pretty normal in most countries, actually. If you think about Napoleon, for example. Napoleon, had no problem sacrificing hundreds of thousands of French men for the glory of himself, mainly. But you know what I mean. So Russia still has that mindset. And I think we delude ourselves in the West if we imagine that there is a level of casualties, on that scale at least, that would be a strong deterrent to Russia. That wouldn't be. What would be a strong deterrent would be if they were losing. And if someone came in and said to them, look, you can keep losing, or you can do this deal now. And I've said from day one, as you know, I was on Question Time a week after Putin invaded Ukraine, and I made this point then, and I've been making it ever since. The likely outcome here was always going to be that the Ukrainians would have to put up a fight, give Russia a bloody nose, and then come to the negotiating table, give away some things that, frankly, I use the term don't care about. Now, of course, people in Ukraine care about Crimea and the eastern regions to the extent that it is technically part of their country, but it hasn't been for some years now.
Thank you. Thank you, Moscow Konstantin.
It's unlikely to be recovered without significant ramping up of Western support. And so the question is, what was all this for? Because when you say Russia may have lost up to 500,000 men, you have to recognize that Ukraine has lost hundreds of thousands of men too, almost certainly, and had its cities bombed and its infrastructure destroyed and. What was all this for? And my view always was that if we were going to support Ukraine to fight and encourage them to fight, then it had to be for one very important objective, the only important objective in this entire conflict, which is to preserve Ukraine's sovereignty for the next 100 years. For the next 100 years. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's either membership of NATO, it's some sort of Korean-style scenario, or it's UN peacekeepers, or something where it's no longer a piece of paper. You are now part of some sort of bloc, which means you're physically safe from ever being invaded by Russia again. That's the only thing that was ever worth fighting for in Ukraine. And that's the deal that now needs to be struck. How you achieve that, that's going to be a challenge, but I certainly don't see it being achieved by the current US administration.
You've been very generous with your time. Finally, let me just ask you this. What impressions did you form of the vast Australian country?
Oh, I can't tell you how enthused I was. I really can. And I made the joke whenever I traveled around that, Australians are kind of like those Japanese soldiers stuck on those islands, still unaware that the war was over. And it's a very cynical joke about the state of the Western world. But I have to say, I think perhaps, I was told recently that the way the English that's spoken into the former colonies is actually more authentic to the English that people spoke in Britain at the time of colonization. And I think in some ways the embers of Western civilization are continuing to smolder in places like Australia in a way that perhaps we sometimes don't feel here for all sorts of reasons. But I was very enthused, I have to say. And I think it was wonderful to see a country that...
Okay, I'm bored. Don't care. What is this?
Do you know, it's crazy, the amount of people that are saying the best veneers that they've ever seen. Thanks so much. But I'm even happier now because of all the comments and all the messages I get, and then people stop me saying, God, where'd you get your teeth done? I look so... Now, that's what I was a bit nervous when I got them done, because I thought, the last thing I want is to get my veneers done and then for not to look natural, I wanted to keep the natural look, so... That's why I got them exactly.
This has to be a meme video, right?
Perfect. Now, I don't want to gatekeep. I went to Turkey to get these done, which I think...
When I remember, tweeting about this guy actually when he was doing these. You couldn't write a better finale to the last 8 years of a demented president resigning and handing over the candidacy to someone who was picked because she had a vagina of color. Dazed.